for the stream to fire up all across the beautiful fruited plains of the internet, and then we can go ahead and get started. We always have to wait on a couple of the platforms to, get up to gear and get rolling, and then we can get started. Let's make sure that we're okay on YouTube, and then we can blast off, I suppose. Then we can evacuate just like we did in Afghanistan. All right, let's take a quick look. We're ready to rock and roll, so let's get started. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gruler. I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have represented thousands of good people facing criminal charges. And throughout our time in practice, we have seen a lot of problems with our justice system. I'm talking about misconduct involving the police. We have prosecutors behaving poorly. We've got judges not particularly interested in a little thing called justice. And it all starts with the politicians, the people at the top, the ones who write the rules and pass the laws that they expect you and me to follow, but sometimes have a little bit of difficulty doing so themselves. That's why we started this show called Watching the Watchers, so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. And we're grateful that you are here and with us today because we've got a lot to get into. We're going to start off by talking about Afghanistan. Today is basically the last day there. The U.S. military announced the withdrawal has been completed. And so in our first segment today, we're going to be able to listen to that together. The end of the war, as it has been communicated to us by our very competent leadership. And so we'll see if it really is the end of the war, what happens next. We've got a lot to get to there, a lot of activity going on. Politico came out with a report over the weekend that is shedding some more light on the explosion that took place last week that killed 13 service members, 13 Americans, not to mention hundreds of other Afghanistan people. And so there's some idea here that maybe the U.S. government knew a little bit more about this than they had let on. And so we're going to go through that story and break that down. A lot of Afghanistan stuff in the first segment. Then in the next segment, we're going to jump over and talk about COVID and what is happening out there with the schools, because we've been following the schools for some time, seeing what the universities are doing, seeing what the kind of grade schools are doing, what the preschools are doing, how they're all reacting to COVID now that COVID has a FDA-approved vaccine that's available. Well, you can see where this is going. Dr. Fauci is out there saying it's going to be a good idea if all students at some point are vaccinated with the coronavirus vaccine. And then we're going to check in with a doctor by the name of Dr. Miguel Cardona, or Cordana, I don't know. He is the Secretary of Education. And we talked about this last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago. Joe Biden came out during a presidential address, kind of hinted and said, well, I'm going to unleash my Department of Education to go out there into your schools and tell you how to run things. And I was sort of joking at the time, well, what's the difference? They have basically taken over property rights. They've taken over your liberty rights, your free speech rights. Well, why not just take over the schools too? Everything else is being nationalized. Why don't they just nationalize the school on top of it? Well, they're doing it to some degree because the Secretary of Education is now announcing an investigation into 5 states. The feds are investigating 5 states over their prohibitions on universal masking. So we're going to take a look at that and see where that goes. So we've got that in the second segment. Then in our final segment, we haven't talked about this case here on the show because it's so old and our show is relatively new. But Elizabeth Holmes, the Theranos CEO, former CEO, it's now a defunct company. She is up for trial this week. Jury selection is going to start on Tuesday. And so we're going to rewind the clock a little bit and go back to 2018 and see what her indictment looks like. This is a former CEO. You may remember her if you've been around a while. She, in 2018, and actually many years leading up until this was sort of the next Steve Jobs. This woman was supposed to be kind of the savior, the new game in town for the big tech people. There's Zuckerberg and Dorsey and Bezos, and it was going to be Elizabeth Holmes. Turns out all the stuff that she was selling was totally fraudulent, and she sort of scammed a bunch of people out of a bunch of money. And so she got indicted for wire fraud. So we're going to take a look at that indictment because she's scheduled for a trial this week. And so we'll see how that's going to unfold as the U.S. government continues to prosecute people in this country. So we're going to get into that and more. If you want to be a part of the show, I'd love it if you did, because it's a live stream and it's a lot more fun when we are doing it together, I'd say. So head on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com, where there is a form that looks just like this, and you can ask a question. Please do me a favor, keep your questions in order as I'm talking about the segment. It just helps me to kind of flow through the questions a little bit more easily. But ask a question. I'll do my very best to make sure we get to all of those. We also have super chats that are now back in business. We were demonetized there for a long time, but we're back in business now. If you submit one of those over on YouTube, that's what it will show up and look like. And of course, we appreciate your support all over the place. If you want the segments of the show, if you are used to coming to this channel looking for the clips and the different segments, they're not here anymore. We moved them over to a different channel. It's at Robert Gruler ESQ Clips. Just search my name and search the word clips. Make sure you subscribe over there so you don't miss any of those. Sometimes, you'll come and watch for the first 45 minutes. I missed the next two segments. This way, just go and pick out the segments. You don't have to go and kind of scroll and figure out where you left off. Just say, I skipped that segment. Just go to the final segment. Make it a lot easier. And if you don't watch those, if you're here for the entire show all the time, well, you don't have to do a thing. And thanks for being here. We love that. All right. And so enough of that. Let's get into the news of the day. The war in Afghanistan looks like it's over. We've got confirmation from our military advisors. We're going to go through this at length. There's a 1.5-minute statement that was just released from the Pentagon detailing the end of the war. Let's listen in.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to announce the completion of our withdrawal from Afghanistan and the end of the military mission to evacuate American citizens, third country nationals, and vulnerable Afghans. The last C-17 lifted off from Hamid Karzai International Airport on August 30th, this afternoon, at 3:29 p.m. East Coast time. And the last manned aircraft is now clearing the airspace above Afghanistan. We will soon release a photo of the last C-17 departing Afghanistan with Major General Chris Donahue and the U.S. Ambassador to Afghanistan, Ross Wilson, aboard. While the military evacuation is complete, the diplomatic mission to ensure additional U.S. citizens and eligible Afghans who want to leave continues. And I know that you have heard, and I know that you're going to hear more about that from the State Department shortly. Tonight's withdrawal signifies both the end of the military component of the evacuation, but also the end of the nearly 20-year mission that began in Afghanistan shortly after September 11th, 2001. It's a mission that brought Osama bin Laden to a just end, along with many of his al-Qaeda co-conspirators. And it was not a cheap mission. The cost was 2,461 U.S. service members and civilians killed, and more than 20,000 who were injured. Sadly, that includes 13 U.S. service members who were killed last week by an ISIS-K suicide bomber. We honor their sacrifice today as we remember their heroic accomplishments. No words from me could possibly capture the full measure of sacrifices and accomplishments of those who served, nor the emotions they're feeling at this moment. But I will say that I'm proud that both my son and I have been a part of it.
All right. So a nice statement from our military at the end of 20-year war. Like many of you, I was a young man at that time. I was in high school when the war started, when 9/11 happened and the United States responded. And it was something that I thought I understood back then. I thought it was a war against terror, to go and sort of root out the enemies of America, the people who did 9/11 to us. I thought we were going to go and, take revenge on them and eliminate them and go seek justice. That was my sort of boyhood understanding of what America was about to embark on. Almost joined the military at some point after 9/11. I made a different decision, went to law school instead, and here we are today. But now we're sort of looking back on the last 20 years and sort of reflecting on it. What did it mean? Where are we going? Are we actually done with this war? A lot of open questions still remain about Afghanistan and a lot of the lives that were lost over the last 20 years. Feels like the American people were promised something, were told something over the last 2 decades, and a lot of that was not accurate. A lot of that proved to be false. Many people might even say lies. And so we just heard from the military commanders, the people who told us that, it was all kind of worth it, proud to be a part of the organization. And I want to tie that back in at the end of this segment, because we heard from that general telling us that we got bin Laden and we rooted out al-Qaeda. And a lot of the reason behind going into Afghanistan in the first place was accomplished. Sort of a mission accomplished final statement there. It was all kind of worth it and proud to be a part of it. So we're going to go through the segment and we're going to take a look at that because we are going to come back to Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, which are now taking hold in Afghanistan once again. So that was from the military, and the people who are now in control of Afghanistan are very satisfied as well. Military sort of patting themselves on the back for a nice evacuation. Joe Biden and the Biden administration have been telling us for weeks now that everything has been planned for. Contingencies left and right. We all knew that this was going to happen, and things changed a little bit quickly, but it's still good. So they're happy. So are the Taliban. This was on Twitter. They declared victory. They said at 4:57 August 30th, that congratulations to all Afghans on the liberation and the independence of Afghanistan from the American occupation. The last of the American troops left the country 9 p.m. September 26, 2014 is what they wrote on here. So they posted that. Somebody else is reporting from Kabul that the last U.S. flights have departed from Kabul. Skies are quiet. I can hear and see what appears to be celebratory gunfire from the Taliban. And so I was expecting to hear from Joe Biden today. We still may. If he decides that he wants to speak this afternoon, please let me know in the chat and we'll cut over to that. But I don't think we're going to hear from him on the day that the 20-year war has ended, a day after we just sort of had one of the most tumultuous evacuations, withdrawal maybe in history, in modern history. I don't know. I can't think of anything else that might have been more badly botched. But I was expecting to hear from the president. Took a look at his calendar today. Don't see anything on there for the remainder of the day. This is Monday, August 30th. And so the last thing on his agenda was a 1:30 press briefing with FEMA about Hurricane Ida. So not much more today other than a press briefing at 2 p.m. Eastern by Jen Psaki. And so maybe we'll get something from him later this evening, but I doubt it. We'll see if he does come out and answer some questions. Up until today, I've been saying that the administration really wants to hold tight to the August 31st deadline because this is a nice line in the sand for them. They're able to wash their hands of this to some degree to say, we're done. We're not talking about that anymore. It's an old situation now. Joe Biden, to put it in his word, that's 4 to 5 days ago, right? It's something that is historical. And we saw the transition now is going to be from the military operation to the State Department operation. We saw two lines of conversation coming out of the administration for weeks now. When people would ask the Pentagon, are you going to get every American out of there? They would say, we're going to work all the way up until the end, all the way up until the deadline, all the way up until the time runs out. Many different permutations of that. That was today. The clock expired. No more time on it left. So now the question is, the people who are still left, how are they reunified? How are they extricated from the country? The State Department, under Joe Biden, has told us that they're going to do everything they can indefinitely using their pressure over the Taliban or whatever leverage they have. Now that is in effect. The ball got handed off from the military over to the State Department, and hopefully they can do better than they did over these last few weeks, because presumably there are still hundreds, if not thousands, of Americans and highly interested people in Afghanistan. Everybody has been wondering where the president has been, whether he's going to be answering any questions about any of this. Yesterday, in preparation for Hurricane Ida that was down in the Gulf, he was over with FEMA having a conversation with the response team there, and he got asked about Afghanistan. He didn't want to take those questions. Here's Joe Biden yesterday.
I really think it all works. I'm not supposed to take any questions, but go ahead.
Mr. President, on Afghanistan.
I'm not going to answer Afghanistan now.
Can you say if there's still an acute risk?
Okay, so there is President Biden there at FEMA headquarters in D.C.
All right, so no questions from him, but, he's there for the hurricane, and so I can understand not mixing and mingling. But people were still saying, look, yes, the hurricane came at a very convenient time for you. Yes, it's a convenient distraction, but there's still a catastrophe going on in Afghanistan. Would be very good to get some answers from you. And of course, he did not respond there. Now, there are a lot of pictures rolling out of Afghanistan showing sort of what the aftermath looks like. It has all been completely abandoned by the United States. We've already been seeing a lot of imagery about, leftover weaponry, leftover vehicles, all sorts of different things floating around there that have been left behind by the U.S. government. And you may remember, but Richard Grenell, he was a part of the Trump administration. He shared this over on August 27th, a couple days ago, retweeted this and tagged the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the CIA, the National Security Agency, Mark Warner and Marco Rubio, telling them, hey, take a look at this. We got a lot of equipment left over there in Afghanistan. Here's what that looks like. And you're going to notice it's not just guns. Wait until you see those pallets of cash that are lying around ready for the Taliban. Here it is. So they couldn't even bring that back. All right. $100 bills, y'all. There it is. Keeps going. That's good stuff. Good gear for the people that the United States has been fighting for the last 20 years. Not to mention all of that cash, a lot of money over there. I wonder if that was as much as they left over in Iran under the Obama administration, but quite a lot of money. Yeah, to be fair, it is fiat money. It's not, they printed a lot of that over here, so it's kind of useless in many ways. But we'll see what they do with it. They have a lot of it, so they're going to be able to use that on an international market and probably buy whatever they need. So that's great. Good job. Well done. Good evacuation there. Now, over the weekend, yesterday, this is from today. Politico is also reporting that the U.S. military had a lot of intelligence, for once, that was indicating that there was going to be an explosion, and maybe the U.S. didn't do what it should have been doing to save lives. Let's take a look at this article over from the Pentagon. Said that they were prepared for, quote, a mass casualty attack hours before the explosion. So if the Pentagon did prepare, or they were prepared for this attack, well, why did 13 American service members die? Detailed notes of the 3 classified calls that were provided to Politico show top Pentagon officials knew of the imminent threat, but struggled to close Abbey Gate, which of course is the big problem. If the military knew about this, there's going to be a threat, and it's going to be at Abbey Gate, and it's going to explode there, and we've got a bunch of military personnel there, might be a good idea to close that gate. And if they're debating and deliberating about these decisions, who was responsible for not doing that? Maybe they're responsible for 13 service members being killed, not to mention dozens or hundreds of other Afghanistan people. All right, so we go into this, and it's written by Laura Sigmund. Says, just 24 hours before a suicide bomb detonated outside the airport, senior military leaders gathered for the Pentagon's morning brief. Speaking from a secure video conference on the 3rd floor of the Pentagon, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, Mr. Bubble-wrapped face himself, instructed more than a dozen of the department's top leaders around the world to make preparations for an imminent mass casualty event. That's at 4:30 p.m. This is according to classified detailed notes of the gathering. During the meeting, we had General Mark Miley, Joint Chiefs of Staff, warned of a, quote, significant intelligence, talking about ISIS-K and a complex attack. Again, these are notes that are quoted here. Now, these notes, there were sort of, if you go into the Political article, I don't think I clipped it, but they tell you where these notes came from. It's multiple different sources, many people who were part of the meeting. And so they got these notes independently, and then they corroborated them over at Politico. So they got, John said this, Mark said that, Matthew said this. And when they're reading through those, right, they get their reports and they say that corroborates, all of these pieces corroborate each other. And so that's what they're reporting on. So they're telling us that there were commanders who were calling into this meeting. They were calling specifically from Kabul. They relayed, they said Abbey Gate. Remember, we talked about the 2 areas where the explosions were. One was at the Abbey Gate. One was over by the hotel. Said that there were people gathering there in order to get into the airport. They were, quote, the highest risk. Austin said, I don't believe people get the incredible amount of risk on the ground. Separate call at 4 p.m. or 12:30 in Kabul. Commanders detailed a plan to close Abbey Gate by Thursday afternoon. Okay, so we have a plan in place now. We've got commanders. We don't know who those are yet, but they're saying specifically, all right, look, Abbey Gate's a problem. It's a high risk. Austin says there's an incredible amount of risk on the ground. They have a plan to close Abbey Gate, but they don't. Americans decide to keep the gate open longer in order to allow British allies who accelerated their withdrawal to continue to evacuate. They were based at the Barron Hotel. So then American troops were still processing entrance at 6 p.m. That's when the suicide bomber went off. 200 people dead, 13 U.S. service members. According to the call notes, Somebody named Vasily said that he was looking to shut down the gate. The team already had closed 2 other airports, the North Gate and the East Gate. Leaders at the time had already discussed with the Taliban additional measures outside of the gate, said that they planned to have Abbey Gate closed by Thursday afternoon, but it wasn't closed on schedule. On the call, NATO allies were also communicating that they were having problem with the Taliban. They were obstructing convoys. And listen to this. We're going to put a pin in this. We're going to come back to this later. Despite the tensions, the military continued relaying to the militants precise details about the timelines for the withdrawal and the process for getting American citizens through the gate. The Taliban was operating buses, picking people up for evacuation. So we're going to put a pin in that because you may have seen this over the weekend on the Sunday shows, but we had Jake Sullivan and we had Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor, who both were out there pushing back on the sort of the meme that's going around, the news story that the U.S. government gave the Taliban a kill list. We heard Jake Tapper, who was, what's he from, CNN, who was communicating with Jake Sullivan saying, why did you give him a kill list? Are you nuts? How is this making any sense at all? And Jake Sullivan and Anthony Blinken were pushing back on this all weekend. But you'll notice here, it says the military continued relaying precise details about the timelines. So now you might say that those other stories have been corroborated, in fact, by the Politico. Senior military intelligence official, not identified by name in the call, reiterated that there were continuing to see indications of ISIS-K planning major attacks. It was all too late. The bombing at 6 p.m. came out, killed 13 people. Then after that, we see that Joe Biden went over to the Dover Air Force Base, and it was attended by Biden, Austin, Miley, and others. 13 service members were dead. 200 Afghan civilian, other personnel were all killed. So now we were dealing with Joe Biden sort of receiving the people at the airport, and there was a scene. Before we get there, there was a lot of aftermath. We talked about a lot of the death and the pain from last week. And I listened to this podcast, this woman, Kathy McCollum, she's the mother of a fallen U.S. Marine, and she called into a radio show, and she's very upset about this. And so I'm going to play you just a quick minute of this very upset woman. She has some choice words for Joe Biden. She does mention the election in here a little bit. Just a quick reminder before we play this clip that Joe Biden won the election. That's why she's upset at Joe Biden. And so she has a little bit of a phrase there about the election, but of course, this is just a grieving mother who's very upset with what she is seeing. So let's listen into her, and, content warning that she's very upset. Everything is bleeped out. There's no profanity to my recollection in here, but here she is calling in after have just lost her son from this whole debacle. Here she is.
I'm going to take this call. I'm going to start with calls here. Kathy, Colorado, you're on the Will Count Majority. Hello.
Hey, my son was one of the Marines that died yesterday. And to listen to that. Sorry, I'm on the radio.
No. Go ahead.
My son was one of the Marines that died yesterday. 20 years and 6 months old, getting ready to come home from freaking Jordan to be with his wife to watch the birth of his son. And that feckless, dementia-ridden piece of crap just sent my son to die. I woke up at 4 o'clock this morning to Marines at my door telling me my son was dead. So to have her on right before me and listen to that piece of crap talk about diplomatic crap with freaking Taliban terrorists who just freaking blew up my son and know nothing, to not say anything about, oh my God, I'm so sorry for the families. So my son is gone, and I just want all you Democrats who cheated in the election or who voted for him legitimately, you just killed my son.
Oh, man, you can feel that. So, yeah, so that's raw. That's what a lot of people in this country are going through right now. And, I had to ask myself if I wanted to play that, but I did because I think it's something that this administration is going to try to gloss over. I think that they are on a rapid fire pace to just get over this, move on to the next thing. Something else will come down the pike that they're going to focus all their attention to, maybe, vaccines in schools or who knows, whatever will be next, that they'll try to shift everybody's attention to. But there are people out there that are going to be suffering with the consequences of this administration's decision for a long time. Regardless of what you think about, the ultimate decision, I think many people can at least agree, you're seeing even many Democrats come around to this now, that this exit was completely botched and that many of these casualties probably didn't need to happen, right? It wasn't a foregone conclusion or it wasn't an automatic outcome that we had to lose people before we withdrew from Afghanistan. Might say likely, might say even probable, but it's not a requirement. And I've heard it put this way, and this is not to make fun of this or compare this analogy to sports, but people calling it your own goal, an own goal. The idea when you're playing sports that you just do something stupid and you kick it in your own goal, right? You sort of shoot yourself in the foot is another way to put it. And what happened here seemed like it was a bunch of reactionary catastrophes, one after the other, from an incompetent administration that's going to do their very best and probably get an assist from the media to paper over all of this. In the very, very near future, we already didn't get a whole lot of questions or response from the administration in the heart of this thing. Imagine what we're going to get after it's now over. Where does this go tomorrow? Now that there are no longer any reporters on the ground, there are no longer any U.S. troops over there or U.S. citizens over there that are worth anything to this administration. So it's done. Book's closed on this thing. So is he going to take questions suddenly? Are we going to get a lot more deep dives on this? Are the Democrats in the House of Representatives going to open up a committee or a commission or do any investigations or open any impeachment inquiries like they did under Donald Trump twice? Probably not. So the reason I played that is just to make sure that we all recognize that this is what's happening out there, and there are people that are dying. There are consequences for this. And Joe Biden he's busy. He's got a lot of other things to pay attention to, and he doesn't have time for all of this nonsense. Speaking of that, here is, you just heard that mother, right? You just heard her grieving over her dead son. Now, as her son is coming off of the airplane, here's Joe Biden out there on the side of the tarmac waiting for the bodies to be brought off the airplane. And let's see where his attention is.
Nicole G., who was one of the 2 female Marines who were killed among the 13, she was the one who posted that Instagram post holding the baby saying, "I love my job," just a few days ago.
Did you see what happened there? Did you see that? We're going to play that again. You may have been too fast for you, but he kind of was checking his watch, wasn't he? And then he caught himself, and then the watch goes down a little bit. Let's do a quick reenactment. So he, when you're in a suit, oftentimes, people don't sort of, wear a lot of suits, but when you're wearing a suit, it's kind of hard to see your watch because you've got multiple layers. And so you're going to, lift your arm up and do that little jerk out there to kind of pull it out. And there it is. There's the watch. But Joe Biden can't do that in a very somber ceremony like this when, your decisions are responsible for 13 dead Americans coming off an airplane. Can't check your watch. And so as he throws it out, he goes, some of the gears up there finally kick in. It's a little slow, right? So you've got the elf back there just turning. He's like, hold on a minute. And finally the gear turns and Joe goes, don't do that. Then the hand comes back down and he kind of pulls it behind his back a little bit. And then he's going to recompose himself because he realized, hey, very, very bad optics to be hurrying this event along. And, all right. All right, you tell me what you think. Here it is again. Here's Joe Biden, our president.
Nicole G., who was one of the 2 female Marines who were killed among the 13, she was the one who posted that Instagram post holding the baby saying, "I love my job," just a few days ago.
Slips it behind his back. We saw it, Joe. We all saw it. We know how you, we know that. Probably nap time for you. Now, look, if that was any... Maybe that's just me, making much ado about nothing over here, but I don't think so. Fox News is reporting the family of a Marine killed in Afghanistan slams Biden, saying the meeting was scripted and a total disregard to the Marine's death. Says, you can't F up as bad as he did and say you're sorry. That was the Marine's sister. Family of one of the Marines killed in Afghanistan last week slammed the meeting with the Marine's pregnant widow as scripted and a, quote, total disregard to the service member's death. He traveled to Dover, Delaware on Sunday to check his watch while he attended the dignified transfer of the 13 service members killed during Kabul suicide bombing last week. Gianna McCollum, the pregnant wife of the Marine Lance Corporal Riley McCollum, alongside the fallen Marines' fathers and sisters, were scheduled to meet with Biden. But only Gianna ended up speaking with Biden. Royce, the sister, said, this did not need to happen, and every life is on his hands. Yeah, well, I think a lot of people feel that way, including some Democrats. So I wanted to rewind back a little bit and go back to the political story where we're trying to still unravel more about the explosion and what was going on and this idea about these kill lists, because Joe Biden now is responsible for these deaths. And the idea would be that it's proper to investigate where the problems went awry. Despite the tensions, the military continued relaying the militants' precise details about the withdrawal. This is the conversation about the kill list. The list, allegedly, that the U.S. State Department or the U.S. Pentagon military, some knucklehead over there, drafted a list and said, hey, Taliban, can you help us find these people, please? Just go out there and find them. Here's a nice spreadsheet. It's organized by age and gender and location. Just go find them, please. And so the Taliban apparently took those, and they were even picking up people by buses and continuing their evacuation. So many people have some problems with this, given the fact that the U.S. is not there anymore. We've already talked about many times on this show that the Pentagon has confirmed that biometric data, all the equipment meant to scan irises and check fingerprints and make sure that they can identify people has already been released. And so people are putting one and one together. If you have a list, if you have all the biometrics, you can kind of go around door to door and just verify who your enemies are and make sure you just eliminate them. So it kind of sounds like not a good idea. I'm just, a humble citizen. What do I know about military strategery? But sounds like it might be problematic. So this gets asked here on Meet the Press. Secretary Anthony Blinken is here, and they're asking him specifically, hey, you know those lists that we heard so much about over the weekend? Can you tell us what was shared out there? Here's what he had to say about it.
How can you be sure any list you share of Afghans who helped Americans won't be used for horrendous reasons by the Haqqani network or others?
Yeah.
Chuck, it's simply not the case. The idea that we've done anything to put at further risk those that we're trying to help leave the country is simply wrong.
All right, so we're going to start that over again because I want to just play that. So listen to how this goes, okay? This frustrates me to no end. Listen to the two questions. So we're going to hear from who is this fella? I forget who's asking the question. I forget his name. You're going to hear what his question is. How can we be sure that the information that you gave to the Taliban is not going to be used for the wrong purposes? That question. How can we be sure it's not going to be used for the wrong purposes? And Blinken just takes that question and answers, we didn't do anything that would have jeopardized anybody. Right? He's talking historically. The questioner is asking about future. How can we be sure that in the future that this is not going to fall into the wrong hands? Doesn't even answer that. And it drives me bananas. Here it is. Listen closely.
How can you be sure any list you share of Afghans who helped Americans won't be used for horrendous reasons by the Haqqani network or others?
Chuck, it's simply not the case. The idea that we've done anything to put at further risk those that we're trying to help leave the country is simply wrong. And the idea that we shared lists of Americans or others with the Taliban is simply wrong.
What was shared?
In specific instances, when you're trying to get a bus or a group of people through, and you need to show a manifest to do that, because particularly in cases where people don't have the necessary credentials on them or documents on them, then you'll share names of the list on people of the bus so they can be assured that those are people that we're looking to bring in. And by definition, that's exactly what's happened. We've gotten 5,500 American citizens out of Afghanistan, and to the extent that in an individual case with a particular group or a bus, to verify that the people on the bus or in that group were people who were supposed to come out, American citizens, especially again if they lacked the right document with them.
Okay,
that's what we would do. But the idea that we put anyone in any further jeopardy is simply wrong.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Okay. He didn't ask you that. He didn't ask you if you put people in harm's way. We already know you did multiple times. He's asking about the future. He's saying, well, what about these lists that you were handing out to other people? Are they going to be used for the wrong purposes? And he just doesn't answer that. And that is absolutely by design, right? He's not a dummy. He hears the question. He says, oh, shoot, they're asking about the future. I'm going to do anything to not talk about the future. Well, we didn't do anything wrong. And and he goes in his little spiel there. But then he also sort of, pivots and talks about, well, look, we had to give some lists because the Taliban were running the bus stations like we talked about. And there are people who need to get on the buses. And sometimes people don't have credentials. They don't have the paperwork that they should have, or the wrong, improper credentials. And so we have to give the Taliban their list so that they can identify those people so that they can act as couriers, I guess, for them. And so you're going, what are you talking about? So the Taliban, first of all, how do they rectify that? How do they verify that a citizen or an alleged citizen is who is on the list? Maybe they're giving them, honestly, unless they're giving them photographs, right, and copies of passports, how is the Taliban going to verify who's supposed to be on the manifest? Who's supposed to be on the bus? It's not a list of John Doe, and they just go, any John Does over here that want to go to America? And they go, everybody on the bus goes, I'm John. I'm happy to go to America. I'll be there in 2 seconds. Where do you need me to go from here? So they must have given the State Department also photographs, right? It's Rob Gruler. Here's his photograph. Here's his height. Here's his weight. Here's, what he looks like. And here's his, okay. Rob Gruler, yep, that's me. Okay, let me verify. Yeah, that is you. Okay, come on board. So the Taliban presumably was somewhat successful with some of these people. Some of the people were properly identified and convened over into the aircraft and evacuated out of the country. But what about the other people that didn't quite make it? What about the people who were told by the State Department through the embassy in Kabul, go to the airport. Don't go to the airport. Come to the airport again. Don't call us, we'll call you. We're not going to call you and we're gone now. What are they supposed to do now? And the Taliban, presumably, has just a stack of paperwork with everybody's name, photograph, everything that they need in order to go up and just round them up. Make sure that they have very high value targets, and presumably many of those people are American citizens. But we don't know because the State Department's not telling us anything about it. They're just going through this and just, oh no, we didn't do anything to put people in harm's way. That's not what they're asking. They're asking about the future. But he doesn't answer that because he's clever and he's not going to. So who is this? Jake Tapper over on CNN was also going at our favorite Oxford graduate, very intelligent, much smarter than we are, somebody named Jake Sullivan. He's the national security advisor. And you're going to hear him kind of tell Jake Tapper, hey, Jake, you got to tell your audience needs to understand this. All right. I am way smarter than them, which is probably true given that it's CNN, but it is still a little bit condescending in one man's opinion. Here is now Jake Sullivan sort of responding to the same question. Jake Tapper is also asking, hey, what about this kill list stuff? It sounds kind of insane. What are you doing over there? Here's how Oxford graduate Sullivan responds.
They think the Taliban's going to kill them, and you've given them a list of their names.
Jake, we've actually aggressively and decisively disputed that report. We have given no list of all of the American SIV holders to the Taliban or any other kind of big list.
Very clever.
What your viewers...
Did you hear what he said? We've given no list of all or no big lists. So this guy's very clever. He's very clever with the words. Oh, no, we didn't give him a big list. We didn't give him all the SIVs. And they go, oh, okay, I guess that's good news. No, we didn't give him all of them. We just gave him, 90% of them. No, we didn't give him all the details. We didn't give him a big list. We just gave him a bunch of small lists that added up to a bunch of people because we were divvying them out amongst all the different bus stops in Kabul. All right, so here's Jake Sullivan.
Need to understand is that the way that we are moving thousands and thousands of Afghans at risk to the airport is asking them to muster, many of them on buses, bringing them to the airport, and then we work with the Taliban, group by group, bus by bus, to get them through the Taliban checkpoints and onto the airport compound. That is the type of coordination we've done with the Taliban. That has resulted in journalists and women and pilots and other SIVs being able to get through and get on planes and out of the country. But some idea that we're handing over databases or lists to the Taliban is simply unfounded and inaccurate. What we are doing is working for discrete groups of individuals to get them onto the airfield. That has allowed us to literally move thousands and tens of thousands of people through Kabul to the airport and out.
All right. So, hopefully it worked out. Hopefully they got everybody that they needed, because it's now over. That was on Sunday. That was yesterday. And the withdrawals have now ended. We heard earlier from the general telling us that the war is over. The military operations have ended, but the State Department is now going to carry forward. And his big success, if you remember at the start of this segment, was Osama bin Laden's gone. Al-Qaeda had been rooted out. And we fast forward the clock 20 years now. 2021, August 30th, the end of the war, August 31st in Afghanistan. And what is Al-Qaeda doing? Well, we have a major Al-Qaeda player named Dr. Amin ul-Haq now rolling back into Afghanistan. He was Osama bin Laden's security in charge of Tora Bora. He returns back to his native Nangarhar province after it fell to the Taliban. He became close to Osama bin Laden in the 80s when he worked with Abdullah Azzam. And now we know that, according to the New York Times, this is the summation of all of the equipment that are now in their control. The Taliban, Al-Qaeda, ISIS-K, whatever other variants of terrorism you want over there, they are now stocked. They've got 22,000 Humvees, 634 M117s. We've got 155 mine-proof vehicles, 169 armored personnel carriers, 42,000 pickup trucks, SUVs, 64,000 machine guns, now in the hands of the Taliban and the Afghans, 8,000 trucks, 162,000 radios, 16,000 night vision goggles, 358,000 assault rifles. Oh my goodness, that's going to make Beto very mad. We got pistols, 126,000 pistols, 176 artillery pieces. And that's just the small arms, folks. We've got 33 Mi-17 helicopters, 33 Blackhawks, 43 MD-530 helicopters, 4 C-130 transports, giant fixed-wing aircraft, 23 Super Tucanos, we talked about those, 28 Cessnas, and another 10 Cessna strike aircrafts. Outstanding. The different garrisons, as you can see here, are spread all throughout the country, and the defense and security personnel, wow, looks like about 300,000 total, were the people that operated it. We're going to see how many of those people now suddenly love the Taliban. It's weird. You know, you used to be an Afghan army that you loved America and democracy and freedom and voting and all of that, but suddenly it sounds pretty disgusting. Those infidels sound like they're ripe up for, you know, a nice little countermeasure. And so suddenly the Taliban, their ranks now probably going to swell pretty dramatically, I would guess. Now, the Taliban, of course, since the U.S. is gone now, U.S. has literally left, nothing left there. They now are entering the Kabul airport. They're going to examine the Chinook helicopters that the U.S. just left behind. Took this right before the show started. You can see 41 minutes ago, which was 41 minutes ago from when we started the show. And here's what the video looks like. They are now in Kabul, taking a look at their new gear.
Oh. All right. We're here right now with the Taliban as they enter into what was only minutes ago, it was an American-controlled portion of the military airport. Now they're taking over.
U.S. gear, U.S. helicopters, U.S. everything. No U.S. though, which is good news if you're part of the Taliban. Let's see what you have to say about all of this and more over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Lots of questions over here. Let's see here. We got okay, so this is a proposal from Monster One. Very interesting proposal, Monster One. Okay, let me read that. Okay, let's read that. Okay, says, not a question, but a proposal. Let's get Rob on Tim Pool. After watching The Watchers ends, let's head over to Timcast, send him some super chats. Tim usually will book guests if he gets a lot of mentions for that person. Not an absolute, but it's worked in the past. Tim usually starts reading super chats around 9:30. Let's make it happen. That's very interesting, Monster One. You know, I'll join you on that. I'll go over there and send in a super chat. I'd love to go on his show. Huge audience. That would be a very, very fun thing to do. And I like the format of those interviews. Very very long form content, long deep dives. And so that would be a lot of fun. Thank you for thinking about that, Monster One. That's very nice of you. What a nice person. Thanks for doing that. I mean that sincerely. Thanks for submitting that thought. Okay, Jack Sparrow says, I spent years training the Afghan security forces. This was always going to be a train wreck. Yeah, we screwed up the withdrawal, but it was going to be ugly no matter what. That's from Jack Sparrow. Always going to be a train wreck. Well, thanks for sharing that, Jack Sparrow. And I think a lot of people would concur with that. I think my issue with this whole conversation is, why did we not know that, right? Joe Biden in July and August was telling us this was all going to go swimmingly. This wasn't going to be a problem. The disconnect is where things go really bad. Sergeant Bob says, smoke and mirrors, Mideast turmoil will never go away. Unfortunately, the USA went away in shame. For now. That was from Sergeant Bob. We have News Now Wyoming says, as someone who deployed 3 times in support of the Afghanistan war and twice for Iraq, we went there to remove control from the Taliban and to remove al-Qaeda as a threat. I must admit, it is a great feeling to know that the Taliban is back in charge and al-Qaeda is already giving speeches. Sarcasm right there in case you missed that. Thank you for that, News Now Wyoming. And it was good seeing you. By the way, we saw a lot of tremendous individuals on our watchingthewatchers.locals.com live chat, which took place this past Saturday. And so I'm saying hi to all these people. Frustrated veteran says, I just hope that people remember who is at the highest echelon of the government when those that we left behind get beaten, tortured, and or killed. I did 21 years in the military and used to think, quote, no man left behind. Now, see, we've changed to get as many as we can before a deadline. We let the Taliban and ISIS bully us into leaving many people behind. That was submitted by Frustrated Veteran. Yep. You are not alone on that. We have Sharon Quidney says, okay, so the last plane is left. How many Americans were left behind? Good question. How many Afghan collaborators? What's going to happen to them? What's going to happen to all the people, especially women who had small window, a few years of freedom? I don't think we'll ever know any answers to these questions. There's no way you can dress up this sack of you-know-what and sell it as the world's greatest wedding cake. Only the useful, idiot, Dem lockstep loyalists would be able to buy that one. There are a lot of people out there who are very happy about this. What did Alyssa Milano say on Twitter? Alyssa Milano's like, I stand by Joe Biden. He's doing an amazing job. And everybody's going, huh? What? Look around. All right. News Now Wyoming says they left millions in cash sitting around. Well, at least we locked down a few U.S. bank accounts of theirs. I give it 3 months before they get that release of any Americans they find. We're going to see that. We're going to see the aftermath start piling up, and we're praying for those caught in it. Thunder 7 says, I finally figured out what is going on and why they left U.S. citizens behind. Why they left the military hardware behind, why they never removed the Marines, even though they had inside intel of the exact coordinate of the attacks. They are never going to leave Afghanistan, although the evacuations may be over. They will never withdraw the U.S. military. They already sent missiles and killed 9 children yesterday. Obama-Biden war on terror begins the next 20 years. The military-industrial complex is too powerful and involves too many to be ignored. Yeah, there is a lot of that, right? I think they're largely to blame for the last 20 years of war because it's perpetual. It's never ending. We have Mustang Jeff says, hey, Rob, thank you so much for Saturday evening's meeting. Learned so much listening to everyone who spoke. So did I. I find listening works best for me. Do you think Joe Biden will ever be held accountable like the media would have held Trump for the failure in Afghanistan? That's Mustang Jeff. It's good. Thanks for joining us, Mustang Jeff. I appreciate you being there and listening in. Candidly, I really don't. What are the consequences here? What are they going to do? Impeach him? Charge him criminal? First of all, Joe Biden's not going to ask for any resignations. One thing that the Democrats are good at, it's shoring up the boats and making sure that they can steady the water, survive the waters. You have governors like Ralph Northam, from Virginia, who, should have been gone and he's not. You have people like Cuomo who hung on way, way longer and he got, removed from some sex thing and not anything with, killing tens of thousands of senior citizens. So the accountability portion of our current political system is just not really in existence. And especially if it doesn't serve the political powers. So in other words, if Joe Biden starts asking people to resign or firing people, that makes his administration look weak. Republicans seize on that. It's bad politically. If Joe Biden steps down, it's bad politically. If there's a 25th Amendment or anything. It's bad politically. So politics are going to come first in all of this. The Democrats control the House. They control Congress for the foreseeable future. And, that's about it. Maybe after 2022, maybe he does step down or resign. There's a big political shift in the country, right? There's a red wave in 2022. But then if Joe Biden resigns and he's no longer president, and the Republicans win and he's not in office anymore, then there's nobody really to impeach. We have sort of the same situation that we have with Trump, not in office anymore. You can impeach him anyways, I guess, but he's not going to run anyway. So I'm just trying to game it out in the future, and I'm not real sure where this goes. The media is going to, as soon as this is over, I think start repairing the battered boat, and Joe Biden will be back. We have Avalon Acre says, I know it's a legit equipment and cash, but how epic would it be if there was all counterfeit cash, all firing pins removed, and all wiring harnesses removed from the vehicles? Can I have a stack of those Benjamins? Says Avalon Acres. So it's, that'd be nice if it was all Monopoly money. And they're like, yeah, we're going to go to the strip club. Would they go there? Radicy is here, says, but how do we have that much cash just lying around? I understand people keep money under the tree on the left, buried 5 feet down. That's from Radicy, who was also there on Saturday. Let's see what else we have. It's loading. There it is. All right, we have Teeny Z says, the Afghanis who don't even know how to do jumping jacks know our money is not worth crap. Laughable. Garbage fiat money. Joe Biden's printing trillions by the bucket load. Who cares? It's Ed says, Rob, are you effing kidding me? Money, guns, equipment. What a total snafu. I love watching the show. You've gone over a lot of information and situations. This is the only topic that angers me. Makes my blood boil. I have a hard time watching the show because of it. I'm glad you review this topic. Keeps me heated and helps me remember when when voting times comes. Prior to my election day 2022, you should review all the Biden snafus to help people remember exactly why we need better balance against the executive branch. That's a good idea, it said. I'll have a lot of slides to go through because there's been a lot of them. What was I seeing? What did I see the other day? Oh, on Twitter. For those people who do gaming, there's a concept in gaming called speed runs. So it's the idea that you beat a game very, very quickly, that you run through it very quickly. So people like for Super Mario Brothers, for example, we all played that game, even, it doesn't matter what age you're at. You played some version of that. Super Mario Brothers, a speed run is you got to get through the game from the first level to the very last level, beat Bowser, everything at the very, rapidly. And if you do it quickly, you sort of compete with each other, and there's world records for this and whatever. Somebody was saying that Joe Biden just speed ran the George Bush presidency in like 8 months. Catastrophic foreign policy, catastrophe, and a national hurricane that wrecks Louisiana, which was Bush, right? That was Bush with Iraq and Afghanistan and Katrina. Thought that was pretty funny. Good to see you, it said. And yeah, that would be blood boiling. No question about it. I'll have to think about that. We'll do a lot of Joe Biden stuff in 2022, no doubt. Angel22 says, wait, what? What were pallets of cash doing in Afghan in the first place? Do the military bases in other countries like Japan and Germany, for instance, also keep pallets of cash on hand? I don't know. I don't know how it works, but we've seen lots of pallets of U.S. dollars over there. We got Robute here says, hey, Taliban, can you give me some of that money? I want to use the money to purchase Monero and pay stuff privately. Monero, it's another cryptocurrency. We've got that. We got Jeremy Matrita says, I don't trust anything our government says. Good call. Even though they declared the withdrawal complete, at least there are private organizations that are still trying to get people out of Afghan. To that Marine mother's comment, the truth hurts. My heart and prayers go out to those families. Me too, Jeremy. Thanks for being here, and thanks for showing up on Saturday. We have Screw Joe says, Joe Biden needs his face rubbed in the Afghan debacle. Considering the stupidity of the administration, they would properly make the situation worse. We have Sharon says, who is going to keep beating this drum so that nobody ever forgets this unmitigated disaster? Who is going to keep on constantly banging this regime on the head like they did for 4 years of Trump? Who's going to do what they did for 4 years? Well, I think that there's a lot of people who are going to continue to be critical of the Biden administration. It's not going to be the media, but there are alternative individuals popping up who are going to continue to hold them into account. And I think you're one of them, Sharon. Want to Know says, are you surprised that other countries can't get their children out of Afghanistan because of no cooperation from the USA? Or is this just child murder? I saw a tweet, look, there's a lot of information right now that I think is still in the fog of war, but we're going to see what it looks like after the fact. And I've been seeing on Twitter that people are saying that even different countries are now being urged by the State Department to not accept planes that are coming out of Afghanistan. Right? So if you get up out of Afghanistan, you're not going to be able to just fly that C-130 or C-170, whatever that plane is, from Afghanistan to the U.S. So you stop off in one of the ancillary countries, refuel, change gear, right? It's safer. You don't have Taliban seizing the airport like a zombie horde. And then you make some transitions. But what I was reading is that people were saying that those planes were being turned back. The other countries are being leveraged to not accept those flights. We have Monster One says, my dad was a major Trump derangement sufferer during the election. He bought all the media lives, believes everything about the negative story. No matter how many times I tried to tell him Biden was incompetent, he would say anything is better than Trump. Derangement caused many fights at family dinners. Last week, he sent me a message saying I should have listened to you because you were right. It's from Monster One. Yes, I know. Well, look, welcome aboard. Welcome back. But thanks, we got 3.5 more years of this garbage. But it's your father. Don't let politics come in between you and your father, especially if he's seeking forgiveness. I'm glad he made the right decision. I think a lot of people are feeling that right now because, my goodness, yeah, even people in my life, I'm like, hey, you're president. How's that going for you? Not looking good. It's unfortunate, right? Because it's not supposed to be like a sports team, right? Oftentimes we can get into this like in politics. I'm left, you're right. I'm a Democrat, you're a Republican. I'm a conservative, you're a liberal. And we sort of turn these things into bundled ideologies. And largely, candidly, I have been somebody who is just sort of against most of it in general. Kind of the federal government, largely speaking, I think is very incompetent. And so we just have to make sure that we don't allow ourselves, at least me personally, to get into one of those bundled up traps where you just sort of start to say, anything the Republicans do, I'm just going to advocate for. Because then you start to sound like Sean Hannity. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not what this show's about. It's not, this show's not to come in here and just bang the hammer every day. Republicans. It's to sort of, introduce some critical thought from time to time, have some fun. And then, spike the football from time to time when these morons screw up because it needs to be called out. Let's see. It's Ed says, at the onset of the Afghan war, a friend passed in the conflict. When his funeral was held, the general showed up, sat in the back of the church. Midway through, the general went up to my friend's mom and wept and apologized for her loss. Not sure if that always happened, but that meant so much to her. Seeing the president just look at his watch is disgraceful. Kind of reminds me of the fakeness of people in politics. On his campaign trail, he desperately tried to make it sound like he genuinely cared about people and wanted to help people. Actions like this and throughout his entire 40 years in politics show a completely different tale. Pitiful from a president that isn't a president I want to serve. That's from It's Ed. And I think a lot of people are feeling that same emotion. It is sort of a shocking change for many Americans, myself included, who sort of, I always thought that the military was sort of outside of these types of catastrophes to some degree, that there were always adults in the room. While the morons in Washington, the Republicans and the Democrats, were beating each other over the head with, podiums and things, that the military was at least keeping it together and that they were, forthright and honest and truthful with us. And it looks like that whole thing has been a total facade that has just been crumbling down, which is to be expected because it is a part of the government just like everything else. It's not suited for the role that is required in this age anymore. All right, that was from It's Ed. Thank you for that. Let's see. We got Soul Viking says, we had a preview for future incompetence when Blinken was owned in Alaska by China. Now we're seeing him in full bloom. Pathetic. It is pathetic. He is very incompetent as far as I can tell. Somebody who goes into world diplomacy with the supposition that they have the same cultural values, the same moral ideals as the United States does. It is beyond naive as far as I can tell. And that is not somebody that you should have at the State Department. All right, Bumma Lickett says, all about Afghan is upsetting, but what upsets me the most is like witnessing a bad divorce gone bad. It's like one partner leaves because he realized the other partner is cuckoo. Beyond repair, right? So he packs a bag, said that he leaves on this date made an arrangement, right? And you think all will be smooth and on his merry way out, but you know what's so wrong? He leaves and tagging along the wrong child and left behind the American citizen, his legitimate kids, where his obligation is to protect and keep them safe. Oh my word. Good day to everyone. That's from Bumma Lickett. Thank you for that comment, Bumma Lickett. I appreciate you sharing that. We have Doc Thunderbone says, what's the deal with former VP Joe checking his watch? I missed all 4 of my kids' births while checking my watch. I got naps to take and stuff to do. Honey, are you done? Oh, I missed it. What is it? It's a girl? Ugh. All right. Well, I guess we'll try again. All right, what else do we have? 3 Girlies is here, says, Joe Biden checking his watch is unbelievably important. These men and women died on his watch, no pun intended. Perhaps if their faces were permanently imprinted on his watch, perhaps he would care. He's a callous, slimy, disgusting being. I can't even call him human. For the ones of you that don't remember or weren't born yet, 1992, George Bush Sr. checked his watch during a debate. He did not hear the end of it. And it could have been one of the reasons that cost him the presidency to Bill Clinton. Joe Biden should have stood there and watches as every one of those casket came off the airplane. He should have looked into every family member's eyes instead of his watch. That picture should be memed all over the internet showing how repugnant he is. His decisions led to their death. It's from 3 Girlies. Yeah. Yeah, it's a bad gesture. He knew it and he tried to hide it. We all saw it. General Austin Miley and others says that we know that there are going to be attacks in Afghan and on U.S. soil too. We got to spend billions more on military stuff that we gave away and send in more troops. The war hawks and the defense contractors and their defense investors owe us big. Yeah, that's from General Austin Miley and all of the other generals who just want more war, more profits. Let's see. Hyper Patriot says, what was the real reason for leaving the military and weapons to a terrorist organization? My tax money for the last 20 years paid for all of that, and I don't want it left behind. Well, they didn't even do us. Look, if they don't want to do anything with it, can they just bring it here? Just drop it off in Arizona. I'll go help you dispose of it. Don't worry about that. We'll take care of it. Perry Masonary says, is our withdrawal really complete? What about all our students, family, or civilian workers? Well, Perry, my friend, it's over. The deadline for them has come and gone. It's been expired. They should have left earlier. They should have, first of all, Jen Psaki was texting everybody. Hello. So if they didn't respond to Jen Psaki's text messages, then they're out of luck. No, they should have known. See the Veil says, howdy, Rob. If Biden was to be held accountable for his failures, does it count when he falls asleep during the meeting with the Israeli prime minister? Maybe this will be Biden's new norm. We can expect this to be the case for all future meetings. I saw that. Yeah, Joe Biden's I'm pretty sure he's out on that video. I can't confirm it or not. If you're the Israeli prime minister, I think at that point you just say, hey, right, Joe? But he has a little bit more class than I do, I suppose. We have Sweet Po-Tay-To. Listen to this mother's phone call. Listening to this mother's phone call was so heartbreaking. I'm sick, embarrassed of this administration. Biden's a piece of doo-doo emoji. That's from Sweet Po-Tay-To, who was also there on Saturday. Good to see you. We have Avalon says, an Afghan strip club. Yeah, baby, show me some ankle. How about that forehead? That might be a illegal comment. I don't know if I could say that, but it was funny. Sergeant Bob says, don't forget that in the Bush era, Cheney was running foreign policy. Bush was not smart enough. Now who is running foreign policy today? I think Twitter is, honestly. I think Ron Klain and Twitter are responsible for what we see going on in the world. We have Bittersweet says, I just read online that they left all the military dogs in their carriers in the airport. Does anybody know if that is true? I don't know if that's true. I really hope that's not true. Boneless Ravioli says, imagine Joe Biden talking about gun control with a straight face after what he just left in Afghanistan. I can't wait. Well, it's not going to be Joe Biden. It's the CDC. The CDC is going to come out and talk about gun control. Rochelle Walensky's already doing that. We have Vienticus Prime to go along with what you were saying about team politics. I don't see a team red or team blue, not really. I mainly just see team purple and everyone else. Right. That's kind of what I see too. It's kind of them versus us, right? It's the people who want to gobble up more power versus the people who just want to live their lives with a little bit less encumbrance from the feds, largely. And there's really no distinction, if you think about it in those terms, between the Republicans and the Democrats. Some, on policy are a little bit more beneficial to some degree, but not really. All right. That's from Vienticus. Let's see. Any others before we jump over to YouTube? We have Joe Biden says, let me check my watch. Hunter's laptop is where? Which one? Where is the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Incompetence? They're still trying to find Grandma. They're playing Where's Waldo in the J. Edgar Hoover building. All right, let's see what came in from YouTube over here. We've got several of these today. Thank you, everybody, for your tremendous support. Let's see here. K. Bean says, Biden's not devastated. He just got 13 new voters. Oh, no. Oh, that's probably too soon, but also very clever and funny. But thank you for that, K. Bean. New Biden voters. That's too soon, but also amazing. We have Just Cause says, wait till the Taliban sees how you clean M4s, LOL. So they're not going to be able to really piece together much of that because it's a little bit complicated for them. Thanks, Just Cause. We have Mike Lombardo says, hit the like button. Love the show, Rob. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Thank you for that. And I'd love that if you hit that like button. That'd be very much appreciated. We have BG Willia says, Biden, remember the watch incident during the 1992 president debate, which I was caused by looking at my watch from the President Bush. Yeah, so I think BG Willia, thank you for that. And Three Girlies just mentioned something like that. I don't remember that. I didn't recollect that because I was 7 at the time, but it was a very good observation, right? Those little things are very important. And especially, look, that was a presidential debate. This is 13 dead Americans coming off of an airplane. Yeah. Definitely no good. We have Kareem says, hi, Rob. Nice to see you in our community last Saturday. This is a great show, and the monthly meetups is the cherry on the cake. Yeah, Kareem was there, and thank you for that, Kareem. I know you shared a bit with us, and so I appreciate you doing that. That's what we talk a lot about here is building a community, right? It's something a little bit better and more connected than the old way of doing things. So I'm grateful that you were there. Look2G says, I bet Hunter gets a big chunk of that money the Taliban has. Maybe he'll send some to the big guy. Yeah, that's a good point. Joe Biden has to take his cut. And Eddie Oliver says, pallets of cash are not unusual. If you accidentally kill a goat or forbid a family member, they are compensated as quickly as possible. Quick compensation keeps the tribes on your side. Wow. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, so Eddie Oliver says, yeah, that's just like it's like petty cash. At your office when you're like, I got to go buy some staples. Well, do you have some cash? Well, it's in the petty cash. Just go get it. It's like that in Afghanistan. We accidentally droned a whole family of 9. Sorry, but come into this closet with me. Let me show you what I have for you here. Oh, the world is pretty terrible sometimes. Josh, oh my gosh, says if the White House is for equity, Biden should accidentally leave guns in every state for Americans to find. No strings attached. I think that's accurate. Yeah, Josh, oh my gosh, I like that. I think Scottsdale, Arizona would be a good place for that. I would love to go and just rummage around through one of those caches of weapons. Some good stuff in there. Those were great questions, all from watchingthewatchers.locals.com and over from YouTube. And I really do appreciate all the support. Let's give some shout outs to everybody chatting away over on Locals. We've got I'm Not Gas, News Now Wyoming. We have Sweet Po, Tay To, and many others. Chairman of the board is in the house, along with Want to Know, News Now Wyoming, Vienticus Prime, and several others. Over on YouTube, Ronnie Cole shout out. We got Half Irish, I Have One. We have got Ghost Goblin. And let's see, Zorro, Manufactured Reality, and many others. Everybody, thank you so much for all of your support, both on Locals and on YouTube. I really do appreciate it. All right, so let's get into the next segment, shall we? We're going to dip into the schools a little bit because they're going after the schools now. Well, they've been doing this for some time, but we're going to dive into this. The Department of Education has their eyes set on the schools. We talked a little bit about this last week when Joe Biden came out and announced that the Department of Education was now going to be authorized to go and make inquiries into all the different schools that aren't complying with whatever Joe Biden and the CDC say they have to do. We're talking about mask mandates and vaccines as well. And so we're going to start off here by listening to Dr. Fauci. He was on CNN with Jake Tapper, and they're talking about vaccine mandates for students, both over 12 and both under the age of 12. Now that the FDA has approved the vaccine, it's no longer experimental. And so now we can see how the goalposts are moving yet again. We've talked about this previously, talked about the different universities and the different schools that were sort of mandating it, and then other governors who were sort of protecting against the mandates when they would come out and say, well, we passed a new law. No vaccine mandates of experimental vaccines. Wait, did you say that there's no mandates of vaccines? No, I said there's no of experimental. Oh, the experimental. Oh, so what happens when they're not experimental anymore? Well, then this law doesn't apply anymore, and the mandates can certainly come back in full force. So here is Dr. Fauci on with Jake Tapper talking about this. This is a really good idea for students. Here he is.
Now that the vaccine has full approval from the FDA, the Pfizer vaccine, would you like to see it mandated for students elsewhere in the U.S.? And once it's approved for kids under 12, should it be mandated for them too?
You know, I know that a lot of people will be pushing back against that, but if you get the imprimatur about the safety and the strong benefit-risk ratio for the children, when that gets established, which I believe it certainly will, by the FDA and the ACIP, I believe that mandating vaccines for children to appear in school is a good idea. And remember, Jake, this is not something new. We have mandates in many places in schools, particularly public schools, that if in fact you want a child to come in, we've done this for decades and decades, requiring polio, measles, mumps, rubella, hepatitis. So this would not be something new, requiring vaccinations for children to come to school.
Yeah, and so you're going to continue to hear that argument come out. It's just, it's just a part of the routine now. You get your hepatitis shots, you get all of your other shots. They're just going to add COVID in there at the bottom of that. And so rather than having to convince a bunch of 35-year-old, just whiny lawyers from Scottsdale, just go get the jab everywhere I turn. Everything I turn on, it's, have you gotten vaccinated yet? It's free. It's over here. Everybody I listen to, it's, well, you're an idiot if you don't get the, okay, got it. I've heard enough of it. Enough already. So rather than having to have conversations with people like me, they're just going to go mandate it to the kids. And so there is less conversation to be had because they just do it. And it's mandatory. If your mom and dad, you don't want to homeschool your kid and the schools make it mandatory, you got no choice. So now what they're going to do is sort of short circuit the conversation that they have to have with thinking adults and just lower this down to a different layer and make sure that students can get it before they have the wherewithal to think about it. So that's where that's going. So that is with the vaccines. Now, as this continues to unfold around us, we're also going to be hearing that the Department of Education is now going to be shining the magnifying glass down on all of the state governments. So we've already seen this pattern, troublingly, come out of the Biden administration. We know that the CDC came out and said, oh, those property rights that you have for your rental property, the ability that you have under your contract to extricate a non-paying tenant is no longer valid. You have a signed contract with them. They're not paying their bills. Your contract says that you have some matter of recourse that you can use. Not anymore, you don't, because I'm Rochelle Walensky. I am the lord of the country now, because I run the CDC and I get to tell you what you can and cannot do. And so by executive order that comes out of the CDC, we're just going to say that those property rights evaporated. They're gone. That contractual obligation that they had to you, gone. Doesn't matter anymore because we said so, because it's dangerous, because of COVID and blah, blah, blah. And if you even dare to question us, if you say, well, I think that my contract supersedes your CDC unconstitutional order, well, I'm just going to go and try to extricate that tenant from my property anyways. And she says, no, actually you can't, because we're going to charge you with a crime for that. And guess what? We run the executive branch, so we have the power to do that. The courts don't have a power to charge you with a crime. They're just the courts. They get to decide the crime, unless it's a contempt of court type of a thing. But in most situations, the executive branch prosecutes the crimes. So the government is now passing orders and has all the power to enforce those orders. And so that happened with the property rights that you have locally. They're superseding those rights. Well, now the same thing is happening with education. Local education is largely governed by local communities, by local cities, by local towns, by local states. And many states, in response to COVID, came out and said, we don't really like where this is going. We don't like what these school boards are doing, and we don't appreciate how they're going to be educating our children. And so, as we've been seeing and covering on the show for a long time now, many people are speaking out, going in front of the school boards and making their voices heard, and even going as so far as to pass some legislation so that the schools are following the wills of the voters. If state legislatures, through their constituents, decide that they want to pass some laws about masks, that's their right to do so. They are elected to listen to their constituents. They pass the laws, the governor signs it into law, and what we have now are different states that have prohibitions on mask mandates. The idea being that the school boards cannot pass universal mask mandates, meaning everybody wears a mask all day, every day. Can't do that. Now, that's different from saying that you can't wear masks. One is just saying we can't mandate it universally, that everybody has to wear it. The other is just saying, look, you're free to wear a mask if you want. You just can't mandate it to everybody. If you want to strap your little Johnny or Susie with 35 masks around their face, you're free to do that. Put them in a bubble for all we care. Roll them on into school if you want to do so, but don't mandate it for everybody else. So a number of governors and state legislatures have passed laws saying that we are going to pass that into effect so that these mandates are no longer valid. And the Biden administration didn't like that because totalitarian dictators and people like Rochelle Walensky and people like Dr. Miguel Cardona, the Secretary of Education, they don't like it when the peasants, when the states challenge their authority. And so what we have here is the Department of Education, much like the CDC did when they went and robbed people of their property rights and their property and violated their contractual obligations and threatened them with criminal charges, much like that happened in America just a couple months ago, is now happening, and it's repeating itself in the educational system. Isn't that fun? So let's take a look at what this is looking like. This is who the guy is. Dr. Miguel Cardona, Secretary of Education, and he put this press release out today. You can contact him if you want at this number. August 30th says the Department of Education, a federal entity, the federal government, they have an office for civil rights. They're opening investigations into 5 states now regarding prohibitions of universal indoor masking. The prohibition of universal indoor masking. You can't pass a law that makes it mandatory that everybody masks up. Not saying you can't wear a mask. If you want to wear a mask, go put one on. So now the federal government is investigating the states over duly elected laws that the state governments have passed. What? All right. So let's see how this is working. We have the U.S. Department of Education. They have an Office for Civil Rights. We're going to call that OCR. So civil rights violations, just like everything, open directed investigations in 5 states asking whether their prohibitions on universal masking discriminated against students with disabilities who are at heightened risk for severe illness by preventing them from safely accessing in-person education. So you see how they're framing this? Your refusal to wear a mask, this argument, is making the learning environment inaccessible. It's not safely accessible to students with disabilities. They can't come into the classroom and get an education because your kid is not wearing a mask. So everybody has to have a mask so that these individuals, whoever they define as a disabled person, is now, I guess everybody's got to comply with that standard. All right. Let's see how this goes. All right, let's see what else we have here. So what is the OCR? This is the Civil Rights Office for Civil Rights. Their mission, equal access to education, promote educational excellence through vigorous enforcement of civil rights. So they're dealing with students facing discrimination, advocates, let's see, technical assistance, voluntary compliance with civil rights laws. They have a whole office here focused on sex discrimination, colleges, universities. American with Disabilities Act is going to come into play here. So you see another massive government bureaucracy, Office for Civil Rights, Department of Education. You can file a complaint of discrimination with anyone. And so that can be on the basis of race, color, national origin, sex, disability, or age. Well, that's curious, because I'd be curious to see what the vaccination numbers look like for certain races. Like, as we've talked about on this channel, there are many different countries or many different states where, in cities, where different demographics have different vaccination rates. Some of them are so low that you might be able to say that if you are not allowing students of that demographic to come into the educational system, kind of sounds discriminatory to me. Kind of sounds like only the people who are complying with the vaccine or with the masks might be discriminated. So you can see how this is going to be split both ways. This is ridiculous. All right, let's see what he had to say about this. The department has heard from parents across the country, he said. This is Dr. What's his name? Cardano. Dr. Cardano. There's a cryptocurrency called Cardano, but that's not this. This is Cardano. We have the department has heard from parents across the country, says particularly students with disabilities, about the underlying medical conditions, about how state bans on universal indoor masking are putting their children at risk and preventing them from accessing in-person learning equally. So it's the parents with the kids with disabilities who want to mandate the masks for everybody else. And by the way, okay, folks, I grew up with a brother with disabilities. My younger brother, Joey, has Down syndrome. So I understand how this all works. He's 1 year younger than me. We went to school together. He actually does work here at the office, and he's going to come on the show at some point in time. So I am very sympathetic to people with disabilities. I'm very sympathetic to parents with children with disabilities. I'm a brother of a brother with disabilities. So I get it. He was in the hospital with COVID for 48 days. I get it. But that's not what we're talking about here. They're going to use that as a justification to bring the federal government to mandate things across the board. It's all got to be equal because of that one particular situation, versus allowing the states to create local solutions for those specific situations. Not going to do that. We have the federal government that's just going to come in and just say, well, look, this is discriminatory and we can't allow that to happen. Therefore, all the schools out there that exist, you do what we say, otherwise you're not getting federal funding. That's where this is going to go. It says it's unacceptable that state leaders are putting politics over the health and education of students they took an oath to serve because of masks, okay? The department will fight to protect every student's right to access in-person learning and the rights of local educators to put in place policies that allow students to return to the classroom full-time in person safely this fall. Well, the rights of local educators, many of them voted, and they passed the laws, right? The parents passed the laws through their legislatures. The governors signed it into law. So many people have already spoken and decided, but the feds don't like that. And when the feds don't like it, they're going to use the power of the purse to come in and just bludgeon everybody in their way, which is exactly what they're doing. We have now Dr. Cardano says OCR, the Office of Civil Rights, sent letters to the chief state school officers, letters, intimidating the hell out of them, Iowa, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Utah. Interesting. Those seem like a lot of pretty red states, don't they? Very curious, outlining how prohibitions of universal indoor masking prevent school districts from implementing health and safety policies that they determine, they say that they determine are necessary to protect students, saying that any of these prohibitions are preventing schools from doing what they want to do. OCR has not yet come after Florida, Texas, Arkansas, or Arizona because those states' bans on masking are not currently being enforced. But they will. They're coming up soon. Arizona is going to be enforced. It just is not in effect yet. Due to these rules, districts should be able to implement universal indoor masking if they want to. However, the department is going to closely monitor those states. The Department of Education, your federal government, is going to closely monitor how your local schools are performing so that they are in compliance with what the feds want to do, even though it's not their jurisdiction. What a joke. We have the investigations will explore each state's compliance with Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, federal law that protects students with disabilities. Section 504 guarantees students the appropriate education, elementary, secondary schools, right? All right. This is what Section 504 looks like. National law protects qualified individuals from discrimination on the based on their disability. Who is protected? All right, so this is a lot of boring stuff, but here's basically what it says. You can't deny qualified individuals the opportunity to participate from federally funded programs. So you see where this is coming in? It's all about the funding. Deny employment opportunities. So we've seen this. This is where this is all going. So we've seen it comes down to funding. The funding, when these mask mandates first went into effect, or these prohibitions on the mask mandates, on universal mask mandates, it already turned into a funding war, right? We saw this sort of back and forth. If the schools were in open violation of the prohibitions on universal masking, well, then the governors just said, that's fine. We're just going to not fund you anymore. But we saw that out of Florida and different places. Then Joe Biden came in and said, well, that's okay. We are just going to fund you. We're just going to use the federal money that many of those local taxpayers paid for. We're just going to use that money in contravention of the will of the people who voted through the legislature to pass the mask prohibition mandates, the prohibitions against mask mandates. It's all coming full circle. I should diagram this thing because it's sort of confusing. But the point being that the people in Florida said, we don't want that. Joe Biden said, that's okay. We're going to use your money that you paid to the federal government to fund it anyways. That was one tactic. The other tactic, instead of paying the money, is they're going to withdraw the money. They're going to take the money away. In this case, what he's saying is, well, look, if you don't comply with the rules, then you're outside of the confines of the federal program, and all of that money, the power of the purse that the Department of Education, it's going to take the money from the states. It's just not going to continue to dole them out. You're going to continue to pay indefinitely, regardless of whether your local schools comply or not. They're just going to be able to take that money away. You're going to pay for it, but not get any benefits. He says that these investigations are also going to explore whether the statewide prohibitions violate the American with Disabilities Act. I'm not going to go into that law, but he says during the investigation, let's see what a joke this is. The OCR is a neutral fact finder. Oh, okay. Collecting and analyzing relevant evidence from state education agencies and other sources as appropriate prior to reaching out and reaching determinations in these matters. Opening a directed investigation does not imply that they've decided whether there's been a violation of a law. August 18th, we heard Joe Biden came out and issued the presidential memorandum directing the secretary to assess all tools in taking action. Cardano laid out the steps that the Department of Education can do to protect all students, including using the enforcement authority of the Office of Civil Rights. This is the Department of Education now flexing its enforcement rights under civil rights laws. Cardano sent letters earlier this month. The letters note that the safe return to in-person requires schools be able to protect everybody and that you're doing everything possible to keep students healthy. Do you know what he's doing there, folks? Without doing it, he is threatening these school providers, saying, listen, it's the feds versus your local government. Your governor signed that. I'm the Department of Education. I'm the executive branch of this entire country. The president of the country issued a memorandum saying, dear teachers, by the way, I know you've got all of the school superintendents, school boards. I know you've got all these teachers yelling at you, or these parents screaming at you in school, at these school board meetings, but I just want to make a note of this. It's very important that you're doing everything possible to keep students healthy. And I'm inquiring specifically under the Civil Rights Act, under the Office of Civil Rights. Yeah, it's kind of a serious threat. Wonder how that's going to work out with the school boards. All right, let's take a look at some questions on this over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. See what we've got on this topic. Interesting little situation developing. We've got a couple questions here. We have our first one from Sergeant Bob. Says, FDA is part of the government propaganda. Fauci has no credibility. Why is he still there? Big government is a domestic terrorist organization. They terrorize me every tax season. Mustang Jeff says, Fauci says no masks needed to be worn. Then we'll wear a mask. Then wear multiple masks. I guess not listening to him will soon be a crime. When will he be right? Let's see. Where does it end? That's from Mustang Jeff. Yeah, it's a lot. It's never ending. Perry Masonary says, let's exclude every child from red states from attending classes daily. Seems like the goal. It very well may be. I was looking up homeschooling numbers. I think those are like, just skyrocketing off the chart because people are tired of this. I'm Not Gas says OCR be like wheelchair ramps discriminate against disabled kids who do not have access to wheelchairs. That's from I'm Not Gas. That's a great comment. And it's a good point. It's a great comment and a good point that illustrates exactly what I'm talking about. Right. So wheelchair ramps discriminate against disabled kids who do not have access to wheelchairs. Yes. And so if you extend that further, it's now the Department of Education warning everybody. If you don't give people wheelchairs and you don't make them use their wheelchairs, we're coming after you. We're inquiring into that. They're disabled. If they're in a classroom in a wheelchair and all the other kids aren't in wheelchairs, that is not fair because other kids out of the wheelchairs might look at the kid in wheelchairs and it might be an unsafe environment. It's discriminatory. First of all, they're out there playing soccer and little Johnny is not playing soccer. That's discriminatory. So soccer should also be banned because Johnny doesn't get the full experience of education. Soccer should be banned. Nobody can stand up. No tap dancing. No chase. No, none of that. Sit down. You don't need to go anywhere. Yeah. All right. That's a great comment. I'm Not Gas. Thank you for letting me riff on that. We have another one here. Says News Now Wyoming says, I'm trying to understand how the OCR has anything to do with vaccines unless they are going to come out against mandatory vaccines for schools. That appears to be the only discrimination. Well, so that's a great point, News Now. And that sort of triggered when I was reading through that. The idea, I got confused on the two. What that memo was talking about was masks. Not masking people up was going to be discriminatory because you might be threatening other people there who want to be protected by your mask, I guess. And if you do that, if you don't allow universal masking, you're being discriminatory. But now you sort of take that same argument, that same standard, and you apply it to the vaccines. And you say, well, if you start to mandate vaccines in schools, well, what about the people who can't get vaccinated and still want to go to school? That sounds sort of discriminatory. But then what the response to that would probably be, but it's the same argument that Fauci was saying, right? That everybody gets vaccinated and everybody just does it, so just do it. There's a lot of logical inconsistencies. It's really hard. It'll kind of make your head explode. The Borg is here. Man, they're tough. They're tough. Look, in the Star Trek universe, the Borg are probably one of my favorite nemesis there. We have the Borg says resistance is futile. You will be assimilated, which I think is probably true. Let's see here. For most people, not for me though. I will never surrender to the Borg or Fauci. They're mostly the same. We have See the Veil says, apologies, Rob, and everyone missed you on Saturday. Okay, so this Fauci mandate stuff is really bad. Got to clear up some facts. Let me see if I can read this. All right. I don't think I can read that there, See the Veil. Okay, let me parse this. All right. So, got to clear up some facts. A person who is unvaccinated is not carrying the virus. I think that's pretty fair, right? That's not medical misinformation. Just because you don't have the vaccine doesn't mean that you're carrying the virus, right? That's obvious. But the Fauci machine is treating the unvaccinated as the problem and the spreader, and this is just wrong. Just because a person is unvaccinated does not mean they are carrying the virus. What this mandate is about making money and forcing the people to hate each other, especially hate those who think about alternatives and have the ability to do research. Fauci's people profits, pharma's profit. We all have brains, we're all humans. We all have eyes, we all have hands. We can read, we can research, we can learn the truth. We can all make decisions that is best for our own person, not to pray for Fauci and the pharma minions to tell people what to do for their stock dividends and bottom lines. If masks are so good, then maybe Biden and Fauci should wear them 24/7 and see how many meetings they will fall asleep at and how their comprehension will benefit from these masks. That's from See the Veil. Okay, so I'm glad I read that because it was a good comment. I thought it might have been a medical comment. We got to be careful about those. Thank you for that, See the Veil. I think that there are a lot of ulterior motives all over the place in all this. We have Sergeant Bob says, do not be fooled by that guy's doctor title, likely a doctor of education like Jill Biden. Not a hard degree to get after teaching for about 4 years. I was encouraged by a doctor at a university to pursue this. I did not Instead, became a cop. Never regretted doing that. The educational degree doesn't signify a whole lot other than taking classes, doing a dissertation, and then passing the orals. Keep the feds out. That's from Sergeant Bob. Couldn't agree more. Keep them out. That guy can, yeah. Monster One says, it's hilarious they are using the disabilities angle considering they have no problem excluding people with disabilities who can't get the vaccine. Yeah, it's a double standard, right? A lot of these vaccine mandates in places like New York and other blue cities have zero exceptions. Allergic to the vaccine? Sorry, you can't go out to eat. Can't go to a bar or any entertainment venues. The hypocrisy is mind-blowing. That's from Monster One. Yeah, but they don't care about any logical consistencies. That's why they can literally, like within 6 months, say, don't wear a mask. It doesn't do anything. Don't worry about it. It's just useless. It's nonsense. It's crazy. And then 6 months later, they're like, oh yeah, wear a mask, 2 masks, 3 masks if you want to. It's better, safer. They don't even care. They just change like that. Don't expect any consistency in any of this stuff. All right, we've got chairman of the board said, how does Fauci still have a job? He's got conflicts of interest. He's lied to America, admitted lying, lost the trust of the people. Now we can see him on CNN equating the COVID vax that's been around for decades, like the polio and measles. He's in a position to know that it's not apples and apples comparisons. This kind of rhetoric only makes people who are hesitant even more hesitant. P.S. Sorry, I couldn't make it Saturday. Well, Chairman, I will grant reprieve on this one, and this one only. Expect you to be at the next one. I'm watching you. All right. Let's see what else we have. We have some other questions. Where am I going over here? All right. Good to see you, Chairman. Sorry about that comment. We have Vianticus Prime says, political decisions in this day and age have been reduced to a Jerry Maguire quote. You want the truth? You want the truth? Is that no? That's A Few Good Men. What's the Jerry Maguire? Well, I can't remember it right now. I'm Not Gas says, watch, with all this heavy-handed crap in public schools, more and more parents are choosing homeschooling. Give it a few years, we'll see the media spinning a narrative about, quote, saving children from extremist education. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be the next thing to go. Look, if you're not getting the government-fed narrative all the time, if you're educating your own kids and you're teaching them about reality and about logical, critical thinking and about alternative systems and things like that, that's dangerous. That means that they might bail out of the system, and we don't want that to happen because Lord knows we need more people working just job after job after job, paying taxes for inflated money that just goes round and around and around so they can keep printing more of it, so that they can keep spending it on a bunch of useless wars that nobody ever asked for, and just keep wrecking the rest of most of our lives for their own benefit and glory. I'll pass on that. Let's see what else. And what about the kids with disabilities who can't wear masks, like perhaps kids with autism? Are those disabilities less important? Do these politicians ever think stuff all the way through? Which is why I'm saying, many of these things should be dealt with locally. The idea that there's a one-size-fits-all solution for the Department of Education that's now going to be just spread around and smeared across all of America is not a good solution. But they're trying to do that because that's how they get uniformity. They get people in compliance with one gigantic overarching bureaucrat who's in charge of it all. Rochelle Walensky was able to do some serious damage to this country. Realtor Patty says, I'm not sure if you can read this. Robert Barnes said that the COVID shot. Yeah, so on that one, Realtor, yeah, there's some conversations taking place about sort of the handoff between the vaccines, whether the vaccine that we saw in the FDA approval was actually, Comirnaty, which apparently is not being produced right now. So it's sort of, go check out Robert Barnes on that. He's up to speed on that a lot more than I am. And he's at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Thank you for that. Sergeant Bob says, now comes the government. Civil rights are so important. Not to digress, but what about Ashley Babbitt's civil rights? Oh yeah, never mind. It's when it's convenient for them. Otherwise, it's just our civil rights. They use the civil rights argument for whatever they want to do. We have Want to Know says, of course, Rob, in Oregon, masks need to be worn, I think, 24 hours a day, unless you're homeless. But if you're tired of Google, in your preferred playlist, suggest goat training videos, how goats talk to you, join locals, must be to Google searches, they're tracking me. That's from Want to Know. Be Brave says, I wish the Department of Education was interested in the actual education of children versus hindering the oxygen going to our kids' brains. No, I think it makes perfect sense to have your 6-year-old strapped in a mask and afraid to even look at people or, go chase or go play in the playground or anything like that because they've been conditioned for the last 18 months since they were 4.5 to be scared and petrified of people. Probably not all that good. Not to mention the fact that they are just regurgitating their your bodily waste, right? Your CO2. Well, look. They tell you that the mask is going to stop the viral particles from coming into your mouth, right? Or it's going to do something. I'm not real sure what the justification is, but somehow it's going to allow you to just get all of your bodily waste, which is carbon dioxide. It's a byproduct. It's not good for you. That's why you breathe it out. Somehow that same mask that's going to prevent all of those bad viruses from coming in, it's also going to allow you to properly exhale your body's own waste product all day, all hour after hour, just breathing that in all day. For a 6-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 14-year-old, anybody, 35-year-old, not that ideal for long periods of time, I would guess. But again, what do I know? Let's see what else we have here from locals. We have News Now Wyoming says, we formed the Department of Education in 1979. Republicans held complete control over Congress and the presidency multiple times, yet I don't think I've ever seen anyone try to get rid of it. We complain a lot about it, but no action, just like most other things. Yeah, well, I agree with that. Like I said, I think that the Republicans are not all that different from the Democrats. Anytime that you can get the federal government on the hands of a major institution like property, healthcare, CDC, like education, the environment, the military, the border, any one of these verticals, they never let go of that. Never. So why would they with the Department of Education? It's a big grift. We have another one here. This is a good one from 3 Girlie. Says, as a parent with a child with a disability, Cardana is an idiot. There are tons of kids who are disabled that cannot wear masks. My youngest girlie has disabilities. Many kids like her have a sensory issue that includes with wearing masks and even tags on the back of their shirts. There are other kids who have breathing issues that cannot wear masks. The struggle that I have is if the child has a disability like a lower immunity, they should wear a mask and socially distance. We put kids with all sorts of disabilities into regular classes with intervention specialists. They make exceptions for all the kinds of kids with disabilities. Masking everyone is not the answer. It makes no sense to mask everybody for the one child that needs to be masked. I would think that anybody being sued by Cardana over this hogwash could solve it by bringing the parents of disabled children to court to testify that their child cannot wear a mask. That's from 3 Girlies. And that was largely my experience too, right? I went to school with my brother. There were times when he was mainstream, so he would go to the same classes that I would go to. And there was a lot of time that I spent sort of going to classes with him and sort of participating in these mixed classes. And I spent a lot of time when I was in high school volunteering at a local organization in Arizona called the Upwork Foundation. So I've worked with a lot of students with a lot of disabilities from all over the spectrum. I've kind of grown up in that space. My brother's friends have a lot of disabilities. When they have his birthday parties, they come over and I get to see a whole spectrum of beautiful people, all with, a little bit of uniqueness to them. And so it's one of these worlds that I think somebody like that who just says, well, we're going to use this as an excuse to mask everybody is not really interested in anything about those actual kids. Doesn't give a rip about people with disabilities at all. It's more about virtue signaling and using the disabled community as an excuse to mandate masks across the board. These other issues, how we raise my brother and how we care for him is unique to his situation, as it should be. And I don't need the federal government coming in and telling us how to do that. And I don't need them using him as an excuse to justify their virtue signaling, totalitarian, tone-deaf mask mandates for everybody else because my brother has Down syndrome. What are you, nuts? No, that's not how I feel. Not for a minute. So we all know what this is really about. It's not about Joey, my brother. It's not about anybody with disabilities. It's not about 3 Girlies, your daughter. It's about the government. It's about them and Cardano, Dr. Cardana, who's now going to go and try to implement whatever the Biden administration wants using this excuse. That's all it is. It's not about saving their lives. Never has been. Let's see what else we've got. Be Brave says, if they can force masks, it paves the way for gene therapy injections. I mean, if the Supreme Court has their way, the CDC can do whatever they want. Mustang Jeff says, resist the Borg, which absolutely will. Never give in to them. Never. I will never do it. We have Vienticus Prime says, Counselor, I move that the official show name of a certain individual be made Dr. Faucet. The official show name, Dr. maybe like Faucet, Dr. Faucet. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, we could explore that. I like those ideas. Let's see what else we've got. Bumma Lickett says, my kids are going to face-to-face schooling, but some of my friends preferred online for their kids. It's all fall into a parent's choice who wants the best for their kids. It's the parents, not Fauci, not the feds. To them, my kids are just statistics, pawns for their agenda. They think they're so smart and they dictate how I should raise them. No. I know politics can be ugly and dirty at times, but when it comes to my kids, these Democrats just pick the wrong battle. I know a lot of parents like me will go to war when it comes to their children. That's from Bumma Lickett. Yes, that's powerful. I could feel that in that reading, and I can understand that. You know, I don't have kids, but I look around and I'm watching what's happening, and I look at my friends with kids and I go, do you see what they're doing to your kids? Look at this. And they're like, well, I don't know what to do. I guess that's just how it has to be. And I'm like outraged. I'm going, yeah, but what? And they're like, well, I don't know what, and so it's, wow, okay. But I can understand your passion there, Bumma Lickett. Vienticus Prime says, look, in this issue of people wearing masks and not wearing masks, I've seen it both ways. There are also people ridiculing people for just wanting to wear a mask for themselves. It's not beneficial either. It's a perversion of the core of what most people are standing up for, individual choice. People want to wear a mask, let them. It's the point where they tell me to do something that I have a problem with. Totally agree with you on that. I don't tend to make fun of the people who wear masks, except the people who are in their cars by themselves, unless it's an Uber driver, or if it's the people who are walking on the streets by themselves. Those people I always go, oh my God. Because what are you doing? It's Arizona. It's like 100 degrees outside. Every living thing dies at 3 o'clock in Arizona. Everything dies. The virus isn't going to live. If you're walking around outside at 3 o'clock in August, yeah, there's nothing to spread anywhere. Everything is death. The whole air is death. So you don't need a mask on. But it's still pretty funny because they might die. It's that hot with a mask on. So anyways, we have to sort of needle those people. But I agree with you, Vienticus Prime. It is something that comes down to choice. If you want to wear a mask at the gym, at a restaurant, feel free to do it. But if you're going to start mandating that everybody else does what you do, that's where I have an issue with it. If you want to go to anywhere in the world and take all the precautions in the world, I totally support that. But don't mandate it for everybody else. Let's see. Nadler's dirty diaper. Oh, God. Said, help me. No one has changed me since yesterday. Nadler's dirty diaper is here. Oh, man. It's been all weekend, too. Oh, what's just the worst? Jerry Maguire. There it is. Show me the money, Rob. Show me the money, Jerry Maguire. Yes, that's it. Why couldn't I think of that? That's like the most classic line ever. How did I miss that line? Thank you for saving me. Want to know says, I can't read this. Oh, I can't read that. That's too gross. Want to know. Former LEO says, just remember what the POTUS said, that everything that is woke turns to crap. So does everything that the feds touch, it does the same. I'll call you in the morning. I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Yeah, they're terrible. They're not good at managing resources to any degree. That's why everything breaks. Mustang Jeff says, honestly, how long do they expect us to play along? This is just I can't say that. Older folks need to take care, but other than that, exercise precaution. Jeremy Matrita says, Rob, it sounds like you need to start having kids because I know you would educate yourself and then share your tips with us. Look, I'll do a lot of things for this show, Jeremy, a lot. I'll go to the end of the world for this show. Just as long as I don't have to have children right now. Right now. Monster One says, did you see they stripped parental custody from a woman whose doctor advised her she could get the shot? Now we have judges overriding doctors. Where does this end? Non-violent civil disobedience is necessary. I agree with you on that, Mustang. I think that, that's Monster. Monster One, I agree with you. I think that introducing friction, as long as it's not illegal, as long as you're just sort of questioning, a little bit about the rules. These are new rules. A lot of people don't know how to enforce them. You want to make sure you understand them. Make sure they understand them. It's not violent. It's not illegal. You're allowed to ask questions. I think that's appropriate. I did see that case. I was going to talk about it today, but we just ran out of time. Too much other stuff to talk about. But yeah, we've talked about many of those. That's obviously a family law case. But we've talked about some of that in criminal law, where the judge says, well, get this vaccine. Otherwise, I'm going to sentence you to more time in prison. Wild times. Let's see what else we have here. Last question before we take a look over on YouTube. Mustang Jeff says, sorry for my last comment, just my personal feelings on the subject. That was from Mustang Jeff. Nothing to apologize for. Just sometimes if it says something that I think, look, if I don't read a comment, it's not because I disagree with it, or it's because it's an inappropriate comment. So if you're a commenter and I skip it, please don't take it personally. But I have read through the YouTube rules about 50 times. And sometimes if there's something in there that I think might flag it, I just skip over it. But please don't take it personally. Nothing really offends me at all. Great questions over from locals. Let's see what came in over on YouTube. Let's see here. Beth Coddington is in the house, says, hello, Robert and everyone. I was really hurt you didn't call on me on Saturday. What I heard was excellent. When I die, please make sure I don't vote Democrat. First of all, Beth, did you raise your hand? Because if you raised your hand, then I was going to call on you. But I didn't call on you intentionally. But I guess I will next time. I'll have to call on you, whether your hand's up or not. So I guess you just dug that hole there, Beth. You're getting called on next time, whether your hand's up or not. Just Cause is here, says, shout out to Joey. We support you, our dear friend. Joey's amazing. He's amazing. He's at home with my mother right now. Have an update on her as well here in the next couple days. But amazing people. Joey's going to come on the show, and we're going to have fun with him. Stephen Farrington says, Joey the man. He's amazing. He might be here tomorrow, so maybe we'll see if we can sit him down. Eddie Oliver says, it's almost like they take our money in taxes, give it to the big pharma for the vaxes. Remember in 2008 when they took our money and gave it to the banks to keep them solvent? Yes, lobbying works. Yeah, I do remember 2008, right? All of that TARP, Troubled Assets Relief Funds, all of these gigantic institutions that have been in bed with the government, sort of, ransacking everybody's pocketbooks for many, many, many years, now needs trouble. And guess who bails them out? You and I do. All the taxpayers do. Same thing is going to be happening around the rest of the country as the institutions continue to sort of crumble. The United States is going to need more and more from you and me. Not looking forward to it. Thank you, Eddie. We have Lava Java Lava says South Africa now has the next variant of the coronavirus. I saw that headline earlier today. I think that they're saying that one is the most mutated of any of the variants, which of course causes problems for vaccines and any of the therapeutics that are sort of tailored to address the original permutation of the virus. So if you get these variants that are very different, some of the efficacy rates might drop even more. Thank you for that, Lava. We have Kareem says that you mentioned you may have Viva on the show someday. Would you consider inviting him to a locals meeting? We are very lucky to have him here up north. Yeah, so I would definitely do that. It might be fun to do like a joint meetup or something like that. I have some ideas for that. There's a networking group that I'm a part of that has big meetup groups that have over 100 people. And then you break up into breakout rooms. And so then you get to meet people in these little breakout rooms on Zoom. So it's like 4 to 5 people in a breakout room. And so something like that might be fun with a bigger community. And it might be possible on locals because there's a little bit of a gatekeeping functioning there, right? People who are sort of who are willing to be a part of a community are not going to be the same people who might knock one of those programs off keister a little bit. And so, yeah, first of all, to answer your question more directly, yeah, I'd love to do a lot more with Viva and Barnes and a lot of that community. I mean, there's a lot of great YouTubers all over the place. I'm just trying to find more time in the day, candidly. Let's see what else. That was from Kareem. Thank you, Kareem. On YouTube, a couple others came in. Says, Radase says, Rob, I had your baby a few months ago. I had your baby. What? I had your baby a few months ago. Babies are wonderful, but they turn into teenagers. You had my baby or a baby? Oh gosh, folks, I don't know what happened here. I'm a father. Thanks, Radase. Thanks for telling me. Oh gosh. Oh, my girlfriend's not going to be happy about that. Wait till she hears about that. Vienticus Prime says, speaking of masks and tests and studies and everything, did you know that a study showed that people that support this channel via locals tend to be 50% happier? That's a fact. It's only a preliminary study, however. Oh, I mean, it's a preliminary study. We need more testing. We do need more testing. Oh, so you're going to have to go over to locals. Support us over there. Thank you for that, Vienticus Prime. I know I'm happier. I'm 50% happier because I'm on locals. There's no question about that. Those were great questions and great super chats over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And we still have one segment of the show left. It's going to be another long one, isn't it? But we're going to fly through this segment because this is a trial that's starting tomorrow. And we got to know what's happening here. Elizabeth Holmes, the founder of Theranos, it's this old company that's sort of defunct now, was going to be the next Apple. This was going to be the next Steve Jobs. We're talking about this tech company that was going to solve a lot of health problems in the United States of America, including maybe some medical problems. We know we have a lot of those in this country currently. And I want to tell you about this case because Elizabeth Holmes is scheduled for trial on a whole slew of charges stemming from fraudulent representation, wire fraud, and different criminal charges for her misappropriation of funds, for her misleading of investors and people who were wanting to be a part of this new company. And so let's take a look at what's going on with this story because jury selection starts tomorrow. NPR is going to give us a headline telling us that Elizabeth Holmes promised miracles by a finger prick. Fraud trial starts on Tuesday. That's tomorrow. Jury selection is going to start on Tuesday, marking the beginning of a highly anticipated legal showdown over one of the most spectacular Silicon Valley scandals in recent history. Federal prosecutors charged her and her former business partner, Ramesh Sunny Balwani, with defrauding investors and patients in their blood testing company called Theranos. They claimed it would revolutionize laboratory medicine. Now, I happen to know a little bit about blood testing. We do a lot of DUI cases here. I've gone to many seminars, taken a lot of courses in science about blood analysis in DUI cases. And so as this story was coming up over the many years, people like me and other defense lawyers were all sort of poking our heads at this because blood testing is complicated. And especially if you're going to be analyzing somebody's blood and they have a sort of a spectrum of different potential samples in that blood, it's a complicated process. It's not like you just sort of, stick it in a test tube and you get an answer about how much alcohol or marijuana or cocaine or methamphetamine is in that person's blood. It's a very complicated process, and defense attorneys have field days unraveling the science. A lot of people will come out and say, no, we've got a new revolutionary method to test marijuana in a breath test. And we say, well, okay, let us take a look at the science. We're going to unravel all of that and poke holes in it 35 different ways from Sunday. That's how we win DUI trials. And so in this case, this revolutionary new laboratory medicine that was going to do all sorts of this legal analysis or chemical analysis on blood didn't seem like it felt all that right. And so what we learn now is that patients were wrongly diagnosed by Theranos tests. They're going to be set to testify against Holmes. Some people were told that they're HIV positive. Somebody else was told that she miscarried her baby incorrectly. After the jury's chosen, arguments are going to start on September 8th. Trial is in San Jose, California. Going to go on for 4 months. So this is going to be a big, long trial. And this involves somebody who's pretty high up, right? Pretty prestigious by many accounts. You may remember this. This was what many people were talking about relating to Elizabeth Holmes. Fortune said the CEO is out for blood. Her secretive company, Theranos, is going to revolutionize healthcare. Forbes called her the Forbes 400, the freshman, leads the class of 2014. Special edition. She's holding this little pill here. She's got her Steve Jobs turtleneck going on in all of these different photos. Remember those? The next Steve Jobs, according to Inc. magazine. 8 women who could own the future, page 47. Elizabeth Holmes has taken Theranos to a $10 billion valuation in just 12 years. A lot of people were very excited about this woman and this company until it turns out that it was all just a bunch of hogwash. Fake it until you make it was an approach that led to criminal charges. She's a Stanford University dropout, fell out of there when she was 19, promised that she could create a new company. Screen patients for hundreds of diseases with just one single finger prick of blood. Cultivated a mystique, looked like Steve Jobs, put on the turtleneck. Big names like Bill Clinton. You can see Bill Clinton here with her. Elizabeth Holmes, Bill Clinton, Clinton Global Initiative Fund. We have Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. We got Mexican billionaire Carlos Slim. She got $9 billion in valuation, somewhere around 2015. When a series of stories came out from the Wall Street Journal, said that she's basically full of it. Here was a picture of one of her devices that didn't work. Blood testing machine at the company lab. We can see here sort of a small little device. Many of these devices are called, the process is called gas chromatography. And it's a big process to do blood testing, at least for DUI cases and criminal cases. Now, here's a timeline of the rise and fall of Theranos. In 2003, she dropped out, started the company. 2004, already raised $6.9 million, gaining a $30 million valuation. 2007 goes all the way up to $197 million, $1 billion in 2010. A decade of work now, 10 years later, in the dark, she says that, well, Theranos is now unveiled. She now unveils a website. So she gets up to $1 billion without even a website. 2014, $400 million in funding, now valued at $9 billion. She became a multi-billionaire thanks to her 50% stake. December 14, we got a hefty valuation. She's very tight-lipped about how everything works. July 2015, Capital Blue Cross, a Pennsylvania insurer, 725,000 customers. They use Theranos, their preferred lab work provider. Theranos valued at $10 million. So a Pennsylvania insurance, wow. They're actually funneling 750,000 customers over to Theranos. It is a fake company that doesn't even do anything. It's weird. It's like a medical care company that's not exactly what it says it is. Huh. Kind of feels like it might be relevant right now. Or I could just be wrong. I don't know. We have October 15 says that the Wall Street Journal ran a scathing article. She appeared on Mad Money to do damage control. Shocked that the Wall Street Journal would have made these claims. 2015, a follow-up article. Now Theranos suspends its nanotainer, whatever that is. 2015, FDA releases its redacted now form, reports an ongoing investigation. FDA catches wind of this 12 years later. Oh, that's good. So 2003, she all the way from 2014, she gets up to $9 billion. FDA figures it out in 2015. October 28, Fortune reported that she sought to raise an additional $2 million before the article came out. November then, $350 million deal with Safeway fizzled out. She was going to be in there. Wall Street Journal got her again. Then in January 2016, another damning report. Another report comes out. They closed their wellness center. So they've been doing business this whole time. Theranos then settles a lawsuit in May 2017 about security fraud, and then the SEC charges in 2018. So this has been going on for well over a decade. They were doing a lot of medical work, a lot of medical care. The whole thing was a scam. The whole thing was fraudulent. And they processed, many people went through there. So you can see why people are upset about this. It's a good thing we have the FDA, though. It's a good thing that they're there. All right, let's see what the indictment looks like. This is what Miss Holmes is facing. You can see CR 18. It's a 2018 case. We got 11 counts. We've got count 1, conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Count 2, another wire fraud against doctors and Theranos patients. We have 1 against investors. And then we've got counts 3 to 8, wire fraud, another 9 to 11, wire fraud. So let's take a look at what's going on here. This was sealed, but no longer sealed. This is now out and available. This is the U.S. of America versus Elizabeth Holmes and Sunny Balwani. This is the indictment. So this was filed June 14th, 2018. And of course, she's scheduled for trial starting this week with jury selection tomorrow. We have 2 defendants. And so just a quick reminder that this is an indictment that comes out of a grand jury proceeding. And so this is going to sort of detail what the evidence that was presented and what they're alleging took place here. This is the indictment. This is the criminal charging document. All right, so we've got 2 defendants. We have Elizabeth Holmes and we have the defendant, Ramesh Balwani, who I believe was the CEO or the chief operating officer of Theranos. Theranos is a private healthcare company, life sciences company. The mission is to revolutionize medical laboratory testing. First 10 years, 2003 to 2013, Holmes called it being in stealth mode. Very little public attention. While she was in stealth mode, she was developing proprietary technology that could run clinical tests, take blood draws, and just do very limited analysis. So rather than drawing a big tube, when you go to the doctor's office, they put the tube in there they withdraw, a whole big vial of blood. And oftentimes, if you have a lot of testing to do, they're just drawing blood after blood after blood, vial after vial after vial. And then they put those all in, the little case, send those all off for testing. And that's kind of a big, long process that involves a lot of moving parts. So if she can do this with just a little pinprick, you just take a little pinprick and you go, oh, here's my entire genome. That might be very, very valuable technology, wouldn't it? So that's what she was essentially promising. The stated goal was to produce a second proprietary device that could just analyze samples in nanotainers, is what they call them. So they had different devices, TSPU, the Theranos sample processing unit, they had an Edison, and they had a mini lab. 2013, they began to publicize its advances in technology. They said its proprietary testing mechanisms yield results in less time than conventional labs, hours instead of days. Going to minimize the risk of human error, generates higher accuracy. All you need is just a quick finger stick, nothing else more than that. Blood tests are provided cost savings, reduced rates of 50%. Sounds like a miracle. Prior to its launch in 2013, they said that they eliminated the need for larger needles and numerous blood vials. All you need is a tiny finger stick or a microsample. That's it. Don't have to draw big chunks of blood out of your body. No need for large needles and numerous blood vials. In addition, they advertise some of this stuff. Theranos could run any combination of tests, including sets of follow-on tests at once, all very quickly from a single small blood sample, right? So when you draw those vials, you draw one for that test, one for that test, one for that test, one for that test. They just poke it, boom, everything you need. Theranos also used its website to talk about its technology. One tiny drop changes everything, she said. Changes everything. It almost sounds like Steve Jobs. This changes everything. Not really, but okay. The scheme to defraud investors from a time unknown to no later than 2013, 2015. Here's what she did. She defrauded her investors. Fraudulent pretenses, fraudulent representations. In 2013, she made materially false statements, false financial statements. And let's see what else is going on in here. They said that these different devices were capable of doing a lot more than they could do at a faster speed. In truth, both Holmes and Balwani knew that this proprietary analyzer had accuracy and reliability problems. Only could do a limited number of tests, was slower than some other competing devices, could not compete with larger conventional machines with high throughput, or the simultaneous testing of blood for many patients or applications. So it was essentially terrible. Okay, in DUI cases, the way that this works is you get a number of blood samples that are drawn from a person. Typically, it's 2 vials, and you get the two full vials. They should be filled up, and one is for the government to test, one is for the defense to test. And they don't actually test that second vial unless we demand it, unless we say, well, we want to see what's in there. We don't trust your test. And there's kind of a limited number of reasons to do that. Sometimes we do it, sometimes we don't. Most often we don't. But there are good reasons to do it. The point here is that, in this case, maybe she could have claimed that she could have given us an answer on that. In an actual DUI case, all those different vials, they will go in and they'll be transferred into what's called a headspace vial. And then those headspace vials will then go into this big, almost pizza-looking tray that has a number of different slots in there that you put them on this big sort of pizza tray, all these different vials, and you put the big pizza tray into kind of the machine, and the machine will then dip down and go into the headspace vial and draw up a sample of the air from that headspace vial, because the headspace vial has been heated up, and they actually are testing the air in the sample for the alcohol. And what's neat about this system is that they can do a number of different headspace vials at the same time. So they can take 90 or 100 different defendants and run them all at the same time. And so the crime lab techs will put, 100 different vials in this pizza tray, put them in the machine, and then they'll go home for the night and they'll come back the next day. Well, oftentimes there's problems with that because the machine will pick the wrong vial. There'll be a crane error. The machine won't pick the vial up and put it in the auto sampler. And so the list goes on. And it's a big, long, complicated process is my point. And this woman was just going to do it all with a machine with a small little pinprick, and it's going to give you everything you needed immediately. And so everybody was going, I don't think so. Turns out everybody was right. She also represented to investors that they were financially strong, that they're going to generate over $1 million in revenues, and they're expected in 2014 to generate over $1 billion in revenues. But They didn't do that. They're only going to generate modest revenues, roughly a few $100,000 or so. That's it. So a few billion in 2015, only really made a few $100,000, had nothing there. They told investors that they had profitable revenue, that they were working with the U.S. DOD, and that their technology had been deployed to the battlefield. But in truth, no, they only had limited revenue for military contracts, and the technology was not deployed to the battlefield. So that didn't go anywhere. And we also see here some of the actual wire transactions. We see here on 12/30/2013, 100 grand transferred. We have 5.3 million transferred the next day. February 2014, 38 grand. 10/31, $1 million. No, that's $99 million. Wow. Okay. $100 million gets transferred from an investor bank account into Theranos bank account. So all of these are the wire transactions. Boom to boom to boom, right? Counts 3 through 8. All of those different defrauds were fraudulent transactions from an investor's bank account over to Theranos' bank account. So the feds just got all of that. You can see here, this was signed off by the foreperson, a true bill, now been submitted. And so the trial is going to be starting tomorrow with jury selection, and it's going to last for a very long time. So we're going to see if that is going to go anywhere. Somebody just said over on Locals, 38 grand. Rob, no, read it again. How much was that? 38 million. Oh, it's 38 million. What did I say? 38 grand? Yeah, 38 million. I'm not used to talking in millions, okay? Goodness. All right, but you're right. Yeah, it's a lot of money. 38 million. Yeah, a lot of money being transferred around. All about that money. All right, so let's see what you have to say over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. See if we have any comments on this section. We have Vienticus Prime says, I promise people miracles from a prick as well. Just a different prick. Hey-o! I would pop a balloon that would make glitter explode everywhere. Of course, I know you were thinking something different. Get your mind out of the gutter. I don't like the company. So I read that poorly, but miracles from a prick. Like a balloon full of glitter. Yeah, like an explosion of a balloon. Yeah. Thank you, Vienticus. We also have News Now Wyoming says, are you going to do a daily breakdown like with Chauvin? 4 months? Seriously, how do you find a jury who is educated enough to understand some of the science, willing to make $25 a day on jury duty? Yeah, that's a good question. No, definitely not going to do that every day for 4 months on this case. Chauvin was a different thing. Chauvin also was public, right? I don't think that this trial is going to be broadcast. It's in federal court, if I'm not mistaken. So they're not, we're not going to be able to broadcast this, but there's going to be a lot of news about it. And we'll talk about it if it's interesting. If it's not interesting, then I'm not going to talk about it. But it actually might be interesting because, to your second point, I don't think that they're going to talk all that much about the science because it's not really a good winning strategy here. For her to come out and say, well, we were going to get there. We had the machine, the black machine with the thing that takes a pinprick, and it didn't work then, but we were going to do that, and here's where this was going, right? All of that's really convoluted and complicated. The defense thus far that I have heard from her defense team is really stemming around the idea that she was sort of under duress. She was sort of entrapped into doing these things by the other co-defendant, by Ramesh, I think is where this is going to go. She's going to try to mitigate her way out of any criminal liability. We'll see if the jury buys it. I doubt it. Let's see what else we've got. We got Sergeant Bob says, kind of like a Michael Avenatti fall from grace. The A is added for Canadian Miss Lucky. I'm sorry. Also Sergeant Bob, right? Isn't that something that Canadians also say a lot? Oh, sorry. Is that right? I think that's right. Good to see you, Miss Lucky. Saw them both on Saturday as well. Very appreciative. Radase says, a lab test can produce bad results depending on processing. An example is a COVID testing. Sorry, I was wrong. I am over 60 and had no baby. Yes, dodged another bullet there. Whoo! Wow, that was a close call, Radase. Radisi. Radisi is how you say that name. Radisi was with us on Saturday as well. Let your shoulders down, folks. Still childless. Probably. Let's see what else we have. Lizzie Holmes' neck says, you just wish you could see me. I'm like a pencil and long and love to be kissed. Lizzie Holmes. Oh, it's not even Elizabeth Holmes. It's Lizzie Holmes' neck. Oh, it's so good. Oh, it's so good. Pencil and long and just love to be kissed. That's all she wants. It's just a little warmth around her neck. That's why she has a turtleneck. Show Lizzie some love. Ghost Gunner says, I watched a few things a while back on Theranos. Miss Holmes is a master manipulator. The Steve Jobs dressing like you covered. She also would lower her voice to mimic men speaking. Interesting. Oh, and allegedly, they just farmed out testing to other companies and said their machines were doing it. One machine that could do it all, except it was all a lie. Wow. I have a buddy who works in the blood testing field who is familiar with the company. He started laughing when I brought this up. Apparently, it's physically impossible to do everything she claimed that a single machine could do. I'll be looking forward to reading the guilty verdict when it is handed down. Yeah, right. And yes, like it is, right? It's very difficult because there's only so much you can do physically with the actual material that comes out of a person's body. And so that's not possible. That's not going to make any, how can they do that? They can't. Very good backstory there. I didn't realize that that's how she was doing that. So she's sort of like a general contractor, right? She'd take all the testing samples and then divvy them back out to actual laboratories. Wild. Thunder7 says, I can't help giggling at the Bernie Madoff of Silicon Valley. She fooled all the global elites and not an investigator journalist in sight. The billionaire class were looking at their lips at their new satanic leader, much prettier and more eloquent than Gates or Zuck. Hope she's acquitted. Love that. Yeah. No, yeah. Hopefully she runs free so they can continue to parade her back up to the top again. That's so funny. So yeah, they were, right? I remember that. Everybody was like fawning over her, head over heels. And I'm going, what is she talking about? Who is this person? Perry Masonary says, just send money. Never mind the results. That's right. We can test that. Yeah, we can test it. We can test it any way you want. No problems. Let's see. Want to know says, Rob, you're good at reading the posts. Missed a few. I'm sure I did. Thank you for the reminder, Want to Know. We have Sergeant Bob says, yes, Canadians are always apologizing. That's right. That's what I thought. Nothing to apologize for, but that's what I thought. We have Jeremy says, never trust a company that uses smoke and mirrors to produce their products. Do you think she will keep the money? So I don't know. So if she's convicted, then no, right? That money, whatever they still have seized, is all going to be, confiscated, right? So restitution that's going to be made whole to the investors or whomever they have identified there. But she's got to be convicted first. So let's see. We've got News Now Wyoming says, even outside the science, finding people who can sit through 4 months of complicated testimony about wire transfers and why it was fraud would be difficult. Yeah, and some attorneys just kind of skip over the whole science thing, right? Even in DUI cases, a lot of attorneys won't go into the science unless it is really necessary because people's eyes just glaze over. You could have the best lawyer in the world who is the science, maniac who can explain it better than the crime lab techs can, and even be technically right and go in front of a jury and lay it all out on the line. And the jury just says, well, he said he had 2 drinks before he got in the car. And you go, I know he said that, but all the science says that doesn't matter because the science says that he's under the legal limit. So you can have alcohol and drive. That's not illegal. The level matters. And we just showed you in the science that the levels are under the threshold. And they say, well, yeah, but he said he admitted he drank a couple before he got in the car. And you say, frustrated. Because sometimes people don't care about the science. They don't care about all the fancy charts and all the science. They want persuasion. They want to feel good. So you have to balance a lot of those different things simultaneously. News Now says you can't expect the average high school dropout to understand the trial. Also a good point. We have Dr. Fauci says, don't judge so quickly. Follow the science. There's no proof Theranos started in Wuhan. It's a wonderful country. That's right. And I don't want to upset Dr. Fauci or Wuhan or YouTube or, any of the other very, very reputable, very trustworthy healthcare companies. They're all good out there, all doing good work. Perry Masonary says, hey, where's the beef money stripped sunlight? Where's the beef? Strip sunlight coming soon for her. I think that means, I think I know what that means. That was from Perry Masonary. We had a couple super chats come in. Let's see what we had here. Newbie of Death Reviews Stuff is here, says $5 for a fiduciary. A fiduciary. I think that's for the Elizabeth Holmes comment. Thank you, Newbie. We have Eddie Oliver says, there's a real good documentary about Theranos. It was 100% fraudulent. They were actually calling patients back for a second conventional test. Can you believe that? They're doing tests on people, and what if it was a cancer test or an AIDS test? And they, no. Eddie says, the documentary is called The Inventor, Out for Blood in Silicon Valley, free on HBO Max, shows the ins and outs of the scam. I haven't seen that. I might have to take a look at that. Thank you for that, Eddie Oliver. And we got two more that just came in on watchingthewatchers.local. Says, let's see here. Monster One says, bad news, shot over to Tim Pools, my super chat, but my card is being declined. I'm at work and don't have time to sort it out. We'll try again tomorrow. We'll circle back on that, Monster One. Thanks for the idea. It's a very nice idea. And I would love to be able to do more. I got to find more time, but it'd be good to do more conversing with other people because there's a lot to talk about. We have V. Anticus Prime says, there's a sucker born every minute. This includes the rich people. Yeah, sometimes they get taken like everybody else does. Perry Masonry was stripped sunlight. Got it. Okay. Striped sunlight. Striped sunlight, right? The sun is coming through the bars. I think that's what you're getting at. That was from Perry Masonry, my friends, and that was it on locals. And so that's it for us for the day. Great questions, of course, over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. I want to welcome some new people who signed up last week and over the weekend. Several of them, thank you so much for coming and supporting our community and being with us. We have Don M911 who signed up on the community at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We got Timbo 411. We got a 911 and a 411. Welcome, Timbo. We got Avalon Acres, who's been chatting away over there. We have Dave 2, who signed up for the year. Welcome, Dave. Thanks for joining us for so long. We have Teresa Simone in the house. Saw her on the Locals monthly meetup, and she's doing good work out there, so make sure you give her a follow if you're over on Locals. And Sir Kexalot is in the house, also joined up for the year. And I'm really grateful for all of you who are joining our community and being part of the show. Of course, we had a bunch of newbies sign up last week as well, and the week before that over here. If you want to join our community, watchingthewatchers.locals.com is the place to do that. We have another monthly meetup coming up. It's going to be in September, but my schedule's a little bit screwy in September, so I don't have the date quite yet because I'm doing some traveling. I'm supposed to go to Texas, provided that my flights and hotel accommodations and the event is not canceled. But we are going to do another monthly Locals meetup because we did one on Saturday. We had about 35 to 40 people there, and I forgot to do it, but we should have taken a group picture because we all did simultaneous big, beautiful spotlights together. It's a lot of fun. Kind of a magical thing. You know, when you watch Star Wars and you hear sort of people using the Force, it's kind of like that. We all connected using the power of the Force and the big, beautiful spotlight. It's a beautiful event. Want you to make sure that you're there at the next one. It's going to be in September, but I don't have the date yet. But make sure that you're supporting us over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com so that you don't miss it. And that, my friends, is it for me for the day. I want to thank you so much for being a part of the show. Long show today, but we're going to have to leave it here because we're going to come back here and do it all again tomorrow. Same place, same time, same location. I want to make sure that you're here. It is a live stream. And as I said earlier, it's better when we do it together. So come and join us 4 p.m. Arizona time, 5 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. on the East Coast. Everybody have a tremendous evening tonight. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.